Today's story is about a guy who showed up to Thanksgiving carrying a homemade pumpkin pie and 2 bottles of seltzer, and walked out with something nobody at that table expected him to have. For 5 years, Nate was the quiet engine keeping his entire family from going under. Mortgages, car repairs, emergency rent, dental work, a luxury SUV lease he didn't even know he was funding. $72,000, give or take whatever he never got around to writing down. And when his mom looked him in the eye in front of 40 people and told him to pay up or get out, he didn't argue. He didn't beg. He went home, pulled out his files, and showed up the next morning like a man who'd already made up his mind. Subscribe if you're new here. This one's been a long time coming. My mom got in my face and yelled, "Either pay the mortgage or get out." She said it in front of about 40 people at Thanksgiving. My sister-in-law mocked, "Let's see how you survive." I packed my things, went. My name is Nate. I'm 33 years old. I'm a chiropractor with a small practice that smells like eucalyptus, and whatever Tiger Balm knockoff I buy in bulk, because my patients love it, and it costs about a third of the name brand. The room is nothing special. Decent equipment, certificates on the wall, a waiting area with chairs that are more comfortable than they look. I built every piece of it over about 6 years, one walk-in appointment and one weekend wellness fair at a time. I tell you that because it matters more than it's going to seem like it does when I start describing what happened at Thanksgiving. The drive over was 15 minutes. I'd made the pie the night before. Wednesday. Wait, no, it was Tuesday. Doesn't matter. The point is, I was already feeling the usual tightness in my chest before I even hit the highway, which is a feeling anyone with a complicated family will recognize without me needing to spell it out. My body had developed its own early warning system for these gatherings. Some kind of internal alarm that activated a few miles out, like a radar that only picks up social situations I'm not going to enjoy. I parked 2 blocks from my brother Brandon's house because his street was already stacked bumper to bumper. Cold wind coming off the open lots, the kind that finds the gap in your collar and stays there. I was carrying the pie, 2 bottles of seltzer, and that familiar knot that lived in my chest every time I went to a family event. Brandon's place is a decent-sized split level in the kind of neighborhood where everyone knows everyone's business and maintains the polite fiction that they don't. His wife Leah had put a wreath on the door. The rest of the decorations were scattered across the porch in a way that looked more like effort than taste. There were close to 40 people inside. Football going on the TV, some game I couldn't tell you anything about because I don't follow that team. Someone's baby fussing upstairs, foil crackling in the kitchen, somebody's cousin arguing about parking in the hallway. A woman I vaguely recognized from church had taken over one of the card tables with a 3-layer dessert she was clearly very proud of. 2 kids were trying to slide in their socks on the hardwood near the dining room while an aunt told them to stop in a tone that meant she'd already given up. Normal chaos. I kissed my nephew on the top of the head, nodded at my dad across the room. He gave me the chin lift, which was his version of a warm greeting, and had barely cleared the doorway before my mom spoke. She didn't even turn around from the sweet potatoes. "Nate," she said my name like a timer going off. I set the pie down on the counter. "Hey, Mom, happy Thanksgiving. The mortgage is due next week. I want to be clear. It wasn't the ask itself that stopped me. I'd heard some version of that sentence more times than I can honestly count, in more settings than I'd like to think about. What froze me was the location. Not a phone call, not a quiet side room, not even a corner of the kitchen where there'd at least be some plausible deniability. Right there, front and center, with the living room full behind me and the whole house listening. I said we'd already talked about it and that I was tapped out this month. Simple, calm, true. And the room just stopped. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. All 40 people, cousins I barely recognized, the neighbors from down the block, 2 church ladies, the pastor himself, kids who'd been mid-sprint between the chairs, all of them looking at me now. My mom turned slowly away from the stove. Her face had already shifted into that locked expression she gets when she's decided something is going to happen on her timeline, whether anyone cooperates or not. "Either pay the mortgage," she said clearly, "or get out." It landed like something physical, clean and loud and designed to sting in front of an audience. From the couch, Leah, Brandon's wife, lifted her cup and smiled. "Let's see how you survive, Nate." Brandon wouldn't look at me. My dad did that thing he always does when things go sideways. One slow shoulder roll, like if he stayed relaxed enough, the whole situation might just float past him. My own voice came out quieter than I expected. "You're doing this right here? In front of everyone?" Mom stepped closer. Close enough I could smell her perfume. Powdery, expensive, familiar in the worst way. "I'm done being quiet about it. We carried you when you were starting out. You pay what this family is owed or don't come back." She called my practice a bone-cracking hobby. Said it out loud, to the room, in front of the pastor. I laughed once, just once. The kind of laugh that comes out when the humiliation is too big to process quietly. Leah started a slow clap from the couch. My hands were shaking, so I pressed them flat against the counter to keep anyone from seeing it. Somewhere behind me, a toddler hiccuped, and that tiny, completely random sound made the silence feel twice as thick. "Okay," I said. Message received. I picked up my coat. I grabbed my seltzer because I'd paid for it. I left the pie on the counter. I made it, and I was not giving them the satisfaction. I walked past the folding chairs, and the casserole dishes, and the green beans already going cold, and all the people who only knew this family from Christmas cards and church smiles, and I walked out the front door. I didn't slam it. I didn't make a speech. I didn't give them the scene they were clearly waiting for me to deliver. I got in my car, closed the door, put my forehead on the steering wheel. The street outside was quiet except for some kids a few houses down running through a yard. I could hear the football game faintly through Brandon's closed front door. I sat there for probably 2 or 3 minutes, just breathing. My coat was still on. The pie was still in there on the counter. I'd left it on purpose, and part of me was already second-guessing whether that was petty or whether it was exactly the right call. I landed on the right call. I made that pie, and they could eat it or not. And something in me, something I'd been running on empty for a long time, something that had said yes and held the line and written hopeful dates in spreadsheet columns and told itself it was temporary, finally just quit. Not in a dramatic way, not like a snapped wire or a breaking point in a movie, more like a machine that's been running too long finally deciding it's done with the shift. A quiet shutdown. That was what it felt like. Hold on, let me jump in real quick. For the listeners, this is me, not Nate. I need to highlight one specific thing. She called his licensed medical practice a bone-cracking hobby. In front of the pastor. In front of 40 people. This man went to school for years, built a clinic from scratch, learned insurance billing at 2 in the morning, and the person who raised him waited for the most crowded room possible to describe his career like it was a weird weekend habit. That's not a mom moment. That's a final boss cutscene. And Nate's response? He grabbed his seltzer and walked out like the meeting was already over. I love this guy. Buckle up. Because here's the thing about becoming the family bank. And I want to be honest about how it actually happens. Because it's never one big moment you can point to and say, that's where I went wrong. It's 100 small ones, spread out over years, each one reasonable enough on its own to justify saying yes. It started when I was 28, fresh off my second year running the practice on my own. My parents' electric bill came up short. Just until Friday, they said. Friday came and went. I didn't say anything because it was $60, and I wasn't about to make an issue out of $60 with people I loved. Then Brandon's car died. He needed it for work, so I covered the repair. $800, no big deal. He said he'd get me back. He didn't, but I didn't push it because he was my brother, and it felt small at the time. Then my dad's truck needed winter tires before the roads turned. Then Mom had a dental crown that insurance wouldn't touch. Then a prescription she couldn't skip. Then school supplies for the kids at the start of the school year. Then groceries when the month ran long and someone's paycheck came in short, which started happening more regularly than it probably should have. Then the fridge finally died, and I bought them a new one and called it a gift, because that's what I told myself it was. A gift, not a loan, not evidence of anything, just a son doing something nice. Then, the language around these things started shifting, so slow I almost didn't catch it. Just this once became standard. Don't make it weird meant don't bring it up again. Family helps family was the answer to every question I hadn't asked out loud yet. And I said yes every single time because I genuinely believed that love was something you measured in what you were willing to sacrifice. I'd grown up watching my mom hold things together with willpower and guilt, and I'd internalized that model somewhere along the way without ever deciding to. Back then, I was splitting my time between 2 clinic locations, one inside a gym, one in a strip mall room with beige walls and lighting that made everyone look slightly unwell. I packed my lunch every day. I learned insurance billing codes at 2 in the morning. I said yes to every walk-in, every wellness fair, every warehouse worker or line cook who couldn't afford to miss a shift but needed to move without wincing. I was proud of what I was building. I was doing it piece by piece, and I loved that about it, genuinely. And while I did that, my family quietly figured out how much weight I could carry before I started to slow down. I made a spreadsheet at some point, named it Family Loans, and put hopeful repayment dates in a column next to each amount, like I was running a small credit operation with people who meant well. Most of those dates eventually became blank cells. The date would pass, nothing would come, and I'd leave the cell empty because writing unpaid felt too final for something I kept telling myself was temporary. Mom became the rotating manager of my guilt. She never asked how the clinic was doing, or whether I was tired, or what I was building toward. She asked, "What can you do this month?" And if I hesitated for even a second, she had the same lines ready. "We supported you when you had nothing. Family helps family. Your brother has kids." My dad stayed quiet through all of it. He had a whole philosophy of non-involvement that he dressed up as peace and calm, but it was really just cowardice that had been perfecting its posture for years. Brandon wasn't always like this. That's the honest part I can't skip over. When we were kids, he was my person. Split food with me under the table at dinners. Covered for me when I broke things. Had my back without being asked. But adulthood hit him like rust. Slow at first, then faster. He got tired, then dependent, then too ashamed about the dependency to do anything about it. And shame makes people surprisingly easy to manage once someone figures out where the lever is. Leah figured that out early. Leah communicated mainly through momentum and energy. She sent voice memos about manifestation and abundance. She pitched dropshipping ventures, reseller networks, brand partnerships, and consulting in fields she'd invented the previous month. One week it was a curated candle subscription. The next it was reselling imported goods. The week after that, it was a wellness brand that needed my professional credibility to land a licensing deal. She once told me straight out that my chiropractic license was a strong image asset. She wanted to attach it to one of her ventures to make it look more credible to investors. I declined, and she spent about 2 weeks treating that refusal like a personal betrayal. When I suggested sitting down and actually looking at their real budget, I became the problem. I printed worksheets one time, actual budget templates with repayment columns and realistic monthly breakdowns. Leah laughed and called me professor. My mom told me I was being condescending. Numbers were apparently a form of cruelty when applied to people who had stronger opinions than income. The family group chat was its own little ecosystem. 23 people, baby pictures, recipes, memes about gratitude and timing, and God's plan. And then, always eventually, the ask. Mom's short this month. Brandon just until payday. Leah, it's literally temporary. Then me, how much? Then Leah, 2,000 would honestly save us right now? Then me, I can't do 2,000 right now. Then Mom, wow, one word, just one. No follow-up, no explanation, nothing else attached. Just wow sitting there in the chat like a loaded weapon pointed directly at my stomach. She never sent anything else after it. She'd just drop that word and go quiet, and the rest of the chat would go quiet too, and I'd be left sitting there with my phone in my hand, feeling like I'd done something wrong by trying to hold a line. That syllable used to completely undo me for the rest of the day. I'd go back to work and try to focus on patient charts while that single word ran on a loop in my head. I got pretty good at telling myself it wasn't manipulation. It took me a few years longer than it should have to admit that it definitely was. Last spring, Leah asked for $5,000 to bridge them until a contract closed. She sent an actual PDF. Arrows, bullet points, a full section using the word synergy, without any apparent awareness of how that lands. Brandon said they'd be evicted if I didn't come through. Mom said I was their only real option. Dad said nothing, because of course he did. I transferred the money. About a month later, Leah posted on social media standing in front of a rented luxury SUV. Filters on, caption about the grind, never stopping. I remember staring at that photo for a full minute, genuinely trying to figure out whether I was more impressed by the timing or just the raw confidence of it. The answer was both, equally. That was the first time I felt stupid in a way that didn't just sting. It burned right through me and left something permanent behind. By May, I started saying no in smaller ways. Not this week. Payroll's tight. I can't cover that one. Every refusal made them less friendly. Mom called me selfish. Leah called me fragile. Some aunt I barely see called the clinic to ask if I was still doing that spine thing. Anyway, Thanksgiving came, and Mom decided to make a public example out of me in front of the whole crowd. That night, after I drove away from Brandon's house, I sat in my kitchen with the lights off and let the group chat explode without touching my phone. I could feel it buzzing across the table like something trapped under glass. Long bursts of it, then silence, then more buzzing. I didn't open any of it. At 2:13 in the morning, I got up. I went to my file cabinet and pulled everything I had. Bank statements, transfer records, Venmo screenshots, receipts I'd filed without totally knowing why at the time, and the spreadsheet. I printed until the stack was close to an inch thick. Then, I sat down at the kitchen table, still in my coat, I realized, and went through every page. I added dates, added notes, color-coded by category. Brandon's car, no repayment. The dental crown, no repayment. Emergency mortgage payment I'd wired on a Friday afternoon because they'd called me at lunch and said the bank was sending a notice. Partial repayment, $300 total, which was about what the wire fee had cost me anyway. The property tax I'd covered to stop a lien from going through. The appliances I'd bought that later got described in family conversations as Nate helped out, like I'd done them a favor by paying for their kitchen equipment. I found 2 charges I hadn't even noticed at the time. One for just under $200, one for $90, both attached to my clinic card with no explanation I could figure out. I highlighted those separately. At the top of the stack, in black ink, big and clear, I wrote the total. $72,480. That's not counting groceries, not counting gas, not counting whatever had crept onto my clinic card over the years, in the kind of way you catch eventually, but not immediately. Not counting the birthday presents I'd sent for nieces and nephews, so there'd be something from me under the tree without anyone asking. Just the documented transfers, the receipts I had, the things I could prove. By 3:41 in the morning, the full picture was spread across my kitchen table like a map of somewhere I should have stopped going a long time ago. I opened the Notes app and typed one sentence. I love you. I'm done being your bank. I read it back. Just sat there for a minute in the quiet kitchen. That was the most honest thing I'd written in years. Pause for a second. $72,480. Not counting groceries. Not counting gas. Not counting whatever charges slipped onto his clinic card, like they had somewhere to be. And the whole time, every time he tried to slow down, his mom came back with, wow. One word. No punctuation, no follow-up. Just that syllable deployed like a precision instrument that she'd been sharpening for years. That's not communication. That's psychological judo from someone who'd been practicing since he was a kid. This man sat alone at 3 in the morning, doing forensic accounting on his own family. The spreadsheet doesn't lie, though, and he's bringing it in the morning. Morning came gray and flat, like the sky hadn't made a decision yet. I slept maybe 3 hours, not real sleep, just drifting in and out with numbers moving behind my eyes. Every time I got close to actually going under, something would surface. A repayment date that had turned into a blank cell. The Venmo notification I'd gotten the day after I covered the property tax, which wasn't a payment back, just Leah sending me a link to something she wanted me to look at. The image of my mom's face when she said bone-cracking hobby and didn't flinch. The alarm went off and I shut it down before it finished its first buzz. I made coffee strong enough to be considered an act of aggression, got dressed, stacked the papers into a folder, and sat at my kitchen table for a few minutes before I left. I wasn't nervous exactly. Nervous is what you feel when you're not sure what you're going to do. I knew what I was going to do. I'd known since about 3 in the morning. What I felt was more like the specific kind of tired that comes when you've been holding something heavy for a long time, and you're finally about to set it down for good. I drove back to Brandon's house. The neighborhood looked different in daylight, deflated somehow. The Thanksgiving decorations from the night before were already coming down. Plastic pumpkins tilted sideways, balloons losing their shape in the cold, paper plates and foil pans stacked in trash bags at the curb. Like the house had quietly agreed that last night needed to be cleaned up and buried as fast as possible. I knocked. The door was already unlocked. Leah was on the couch with a blanket and her phone. Brandon was in the kitchen standing in front of the open fridge with his arms hanging, the way people stand when they're looking at something that isn't going to give them what they need. Mom was already there, She turned when I walked in and folded her arms immediately. Oh, good. He came to his senses. I didn't answer. I walked past all of them and set the folder down on the kitchen table. Pulled the stack out and let it land. The sound it made was louder than I'd expected in that quiet kitchen. A flat, solid thud that made Leah look up from her phone. What's all that? 5 years, I said. Mom picked up the top page and squinted at it. What is this supposed to be? Records. Brandon came closer slowly, from the doorway. The way you approach something you already suspect you don't want to see, but you're going to look at anyway. Records of what? Everything I've paid for. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then Leah laughed. Not nervous, not confused, but that full dismissive laugh from someone who's decided the situation is beneath them. Nate, you kept receipts? That's honestly a little weird. I didn't react to that. Mom was flipping through pages faster now, paper snapping between her fingers, like she was trying to outread the numbers. What is this figure at the top? $72,480. Her eyebrows went up. Don't be dramatic. I'm not. Brandon leaned over the stack and started going through it slowly, page by page. I watched his face while he did it. There was a moment, I could pinpoint it pretty exactly, where something clicked behind his eyes. Recognition coming in pieces, the car, the dental bill, the emergency mortgage payment, the tax lien, the fridge, the groceries stretching over years. All those just until Fridays that had kept cycling back around. I could see him doing the same thing I'd done at 3 a.m, trying to add it up in his head, realizing it was bigger than he'd been letting himself think about. His jaw moved a little. His expression shifted from blank to something quieter and harder to read. He set the page down carefully. Didn't throw it, didn't push it away. Just set it down. Nate, he said. Just my name, nothing after it. That's what I've paid to keep this family from going under. I'm not here asking for it back. I just want us all looking at the same reality for once. I pulled a single page from the stack and slid it across the table. Brandon frowned at it. What is this? It was a list. Short and plain. No more loans. No co-signing on anything. No covering bills temporary or otherwise. No access to my credit accounts. No charges running through my clinic card. I'd kept it to one page because I didn't want any room for reinterpretation later. Mom's voice went cold. You're abandoning your family. No, I'm stopping a system that has been draining me for 5 straight years. That's not how family works. This is how it worked for me, I said. I have the dates and the amounts to prove it. Leah scoffed from the couch. You're overreacting. I leaned forward slightly. The BMW you're leasing has 3 missed payments. The room went completely still. Leah's head snapped toward me. Excuse me? It's in Brandon's name, I said, keeping my voice level. The lender has already sent 2 warning notices. The autopay was connected to my credit card. I found it when I was going through everything last night. Mom turned and looked at Brandon. He didn't say anything. His face had gone pale in the way that means a person is doing fast, quiet math and coming up with bad results. Leah stood up, the blanket sliding off the couch. You went through our finances? No. I went through mine, and found yours in there. That landed. She didn't have a line ready for that one. I pointed back to the list on the table. If you want my help going forward, it won't be money. It'll be a real plan. Cancel the BMW. Sell whatever can turn into cash. Cut every subscription that isn't critical. Call the mortgage company about forbearance. They'd rather work with you than foreclose. That's just how it works. These are real options that exist right now. Leah crossed her arms. And what's Brandon supposed to do in the meantime? Get another job. Her laugh was short. He has a job. Not one that covers the mortgage by itself. Mom slammed one hand flat on the table, the stack of papers jumping. We are not laborers. I nodded once. Then you'll be tenants. Nobody moved. Leah looked at me the way you look at someone when you realize the script you've been running on isn't working anymore. You think you're better than us? No. I think reality exists whether we look at it or not. That's not a judgment. It's just true. Brandon rubbed his face with both hands, slow. He looked tired in the deep kind of way that doesn't come from one bad week. "What do you want from us?" He said it quietly. Nothing. That word landed differently than anything else I'd said. Not angry, just final. Mom narrowed her eyes. Nothing. Not anymore. I picked up my coat. Brandon looked up from the table. "Where are you going?" I paused at the door. "Just for a second." "My house." Mom blinked. "Your what?" I pushed the door open. Cold air came in fast and loud. "I bought it last week. I wanted one thing in my life that wasn't a group project." Behind me, I heard Leah say something under her breath. Mom's voice started rising again. Something about how I thought I was better than everyone. Something about how I'd regret this. Something that I'd heard variations of enough times that I didn't need to hear the rest of it. Brandon didn't say anything. I don't know what his face looked like in that moment because I didn't turn around to check. I stepped off the porch. The wind was already doing its thing, rattling through the bare tree branches over the driveway. I got in my car, started it, and pulled away from the curb. And for the first time in 5 years, I drove somewhere that only had my name attached to it. Okay, time out. I need everyone to slow down and appreciate what just happened in that kitchen. He walked in with a $72,000 receipt, dismantled every argument before it could start, revealed he'd been unknowingly auto-funding a luxury car for a woman who was posting prosperity content from the front seat, and then on his way out the door mentioned, completely casually, that he owns a house. Not a studio, an actual house. Purchased last week. Told nobody. This man didn't just set a boundary. He showed up to the finale with documentation, an itemized list, and property deeds. That's not a conversation. That's an exit interview with exhibits attached. Ocean's 11 had a less organized plan. The fallout came fast and from multiple directions. Mom started calling from numbers I didn't recognize, cycling through phones every couple of days. The message was always the same rotation. "You're punishing your family. Family is forever. You'll regret this. How could you do this to us?" I listened to maybe the first two, and then stopped saving them. Leah sent a string of voice memos about a new opportunity that was different from the others, locked in this time, asking me to just help one more time. I saved every single one of those in a folder on my phone I labeled Evidence. Some relatives posted vague things online about ungrateful younger generations, and people who forget where they came from. I scrolled right past them. 3 days after the confrontation, Mom walked into my clinic. She stood in the doorway and looked around the space slowly. The kind of look where someone is trying hard to be unimpressed, and the room isn't cooperating. Clean equipment, real size, the certificates on the wall, the eucalyptus smell. She walked in a few steps and ran a finger lightly across the edge of the front desk, which I clocked but didn't react to. She pressed her lips together. "Nice place," she said finally. "Must have been built on family sacrifice." I set down the patient chart in my hands. "It was built on work." She lowered her voice like we were negotiating something. "You embarrassed me. You told me to pay or disappear, in front of 40 people, including the pastor." I was under pressure. "So was I said. "For 5 years." She didn't answer right away. Something in her face shifted after a moment. Not an apology, nothing that clean. More like a retreat from whatever front she'd been maintaining since Thanksgiving. She said quietly, almost more to herself than to me, "We can't lose that house." Then make real cuts. Cancel the BMW. Downgrade the phones. Brandon picks up more work. Those options are all right there. She started in on Leah, and I shook my head. "I'm not talking about Leah. I'm talking about your son and what he can actually control." She stood there for a long moment with nothing left to reach for. Eventually she said, almost under her breath, "We believed in you when you were nobody." I took a slow breath. And I paid that back, $72,000 worth, with dates and receipts. My next patient was in the waiting room. I walked over to the clinic door and held it open. "You can stay if you want to talk like adults." I met her eyes. "But your bank is closed." She left. Final update. It's been a few weeks since Thanksgiving. Mom stopped calling from random numbers at some point. Either she ran out of new ones or she figured out I wasn't picking up either way. I don't know which one. Brandon texted me about a week after everything. No drama attached to it, no ask hidden inside. Just said he was looking into picking up extra shifts at a second job somewhere. That was all. I sat with that text for a while before I put the phone down. I still haven't responded, which probably says something about where I'm at with all of it. That thread is just sitting there. I'll figure out what to say eventually. Leah's still in the group chat. I muted it the morning after Thanksgiving and haven't unmuted it. My house has 2 bedrooms and a crooked fence out front and a maple tree in the yard that drops leaves like it's being paid per leaf every time the wind picks up. The kitchen needs paint. I can see where the previous owner patched something badly near the window and didn't fully commit to finishing it. There's a scratch on the hardwood floor near the back door that I keep meaning to fix. The light above the stove hums at night when the heat kicks on, which took me about 3 nights to stop noticing. I slept on an air mattress the first week, drank coffee from paper cups, sat on the floor and wrote my monthly budget on the back of an envelope. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, payroll, taxes, savings. Family, $0. At first, that number looked wrong every time I looked at the page. It still stings a little if I'm being completely straight with you. Part of me is still the guy who said yes every time because he thought that's what love looked like. But it feels right in a way I can't argue with at 6 in the morning when the house is quiet and the coffee is strong, and the only name on the deed is mine. That's enough for right now. What would you have done? Let me know in the comments. Look, Nate wasn't playing a perfect game his whole life. He said yes when he should have said no, kept a spreadsheet of loans that were never coming back like he was eventually going to invoice his own family, and let it go on for 5 years. But when someone backs you into a corner in front of 40 people and tells you to pay up or get out, you don't argue that. You don't beg. You go home, you print the receipts, and you come back the next morning with your facts in order and your bags already packed. That's not petty, that's just being done for real. Drop your take in the comments, and if you're not subscribed yet, hit the button. Next story's already waiting. So imagine you spent 6 years skipping vacations, picking up side work on weekends, living on instant noodles, all to pay off your condo. Completely. No mortgage, no debt, yours. Then your sister shows up and tells you she and her husband are moving in. Not asking, informing, with a spreadsheet. And when that doesn't work, she shows up at 2:37 in the morning with a screwdriver. This is that story. And honestly, what this guy did next is exactly why this channel exists. Let's get into it. A week after I fully paid off my condo, my sister showed up and announced that our parents had agreed to let her family move in. She expected me to leave and find another place. I paid off my condo 8 weeks ago. 2-bedroom place in Chicago. Nothing glamorous, second-hand fridge that groaned every time it kicked on, dining table I'd assembled wrong so it wobbled if you leaned too hard on it, a closet I'd converted into a tiny office because a bigger place with a real one was never in the budget. But it was mine. And I mean that in a way that's hard to explain to people who've never had to scrape for something that long. I work in operations at a mid-sized firm downtown. Scheduling, vendor coordination, keeping the behind-the-scenes stuff running so other people don't have to think about it. Not flashy, pays steady. For years, that job was my main thing while I chipped away at the mortgage. Skipped vacations. Drove the same car for 9 years. Learned to fix leaky sinks off YouTube instead of calling a plumber. My friends did weekend trips while I picked up freelance data entry work on nights and Saturdays just to throw extra money at the principal. When the bank finally sent that letter, mortgage paid in full, I taped it to my fridge with a little magnet shaped like a cow. Dumb magnet. Still hanging there. That letter was the finish line I'd been crawling toward for half a decade. So when my sister Rachel showed up that Tuesday afternoon without calling ahead, I actually thought maybe she was finally coming to say congrats. She doesn't usually come alone. Most of the time, if she's in the area, she drags our parents along or her husband Mark. But this time, it was just her, standing in my doorway holding a giant iced coffee, looking around like she was scoping the place out for rent. She walked in without saying much, moved through the room slowly, peeked into the second bedroom, checked out the bathroom, even glanced into the closet office. Then she stopped in the kitchen, hands on her hips, and said the place was bigger than she remembered. I said thanks. She nodded like she'd just confirmed something in her head. Then she turned and looked at me straight on with this calm, matter-of-fact energy that should have been my first warning. So, she started, like we were already in the middle of a conversation I hadn't started. We've all agreed this place should be a family home now. I blinked at her. She said it again, slower this time. Like I just hadn't processed it right the first time. Her and Mark were moving in. I should find somewhere else. It was ridiculous for one person to hold on to 2 bedrooms when they had a baby, and rent was impossible. I laughed. Not a "you're hilarious" laugh, more of a "what on earth is happening" laugh. Rachel didn't laugh back. She crossed her arms and raised her eyebrows like I was the one being weird. I asked if she was serious. She said of course. Mom and Dad agreed. It was the best thing for everyone. It wasn't like I needed all this room. It was just me. I looked around my living room like maybe there was some secret ballroom I hadn't discovered in 5 years of living here. Then I told her, flat and clear, this wasn't a family home. I bought it. I paid for it. It's mine. She waved her hand like that was a minor detail. Said it wasn't fair for me to keep it when they needed the space more. I could get an apartment somewhere small. I didn't even use the second bedroom. I just stood there. She headed for the door like the conversation was already settled. I stopped her and told her she was not moving in here. She gave me this smile, the patient, condescending kind people flash when they think you'll come around eventually, repeated that she'd already talked to Mom and Dad, and left. I stood in the middle of my living room staring at the shut door. The fridge kicked on behind me, made that groan. I looked over at the mortgage letter still up there with the cow magnet. For a second, I genuinely wondered if I'd imagined the whole thing. But no, Rachel was serious. And apparently so were my parents. Wait. For the listeners, this is me jumping in, not the OP. I need everyone to understand what just happened here. She didn't knock and ask. She walked in, did a full walkthrough like she was reading the listing, and then announced her family was moving in. She didn't request, she informed, iced coffee in hand. This isn't desperation. This is a property grab with a smile attached. She pulled a move so bold it could have its own TED Talk called How to Claim Someone Else's Home Using DNA as Collateral. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Princess Eminent Domain. Buckle up because this gets worse before it gets worse. I wasn't surprised my parents took her side. That part is just context. I've been working since I was 16. First job bussing tables at a greasy diner near our high school. Minimum wage plus tips if customers felt generous, and most didn't. After that, hardware store in summers, then a part-time gig at the campus library in college. By graduation, I had this reflex. Say yes to every extra hour available. I lived cheap for a long time. Studio apartment with a view of a brick wall, furniture off Craigslist, the whole thing. Rachel is 4 years younger. My parents covered her cheer camp fees, driving lessons, her prom dress. The one summer I needed new brakes on my car, they told me money was tight. She was the golden child in the classic sense. Teachers loved her, neighbors doted on her. When she forgot assignments, she was just tired. When I got a B instead of an A, they asked why I wasn't studying harder. The difference in treatment was so consistent you almost stopped noticing it. Almost. She went to some private university. Parents co-signed her loans without blinking. I was at a state school on scholarships working a warehouse shift before 6 a.m. She studied communications and posted photos at tailgate parties and spring breaks. I finished projects between shifts. She found time for coffee shop study sessions. I found time for sleep on good days. And look, I'm not sitting here saying my whole childhood was some kind of tragedy. It wasn't. We had food, a roof, parents who showed up to things. But there's a difference between parents who treat both kids the same and parents who have a favorite and just hope you don't notice. I noticed. And the funny thing about noticing is it doesn't make you bitter. It makes you independent. I stopped expecting help early and started building habits that didn't require it. When she graduated, she married Mark, who teaches middle school science. Quiet guy, always polite, never really had much to say when we were in the same room. They rented a nice 3-bedroom apartment not far from my place. Newer building, gym, rooftop deck, the whole package. Nicer than my condo by a long shot. And honestly, fine. Good for them. Then they had a baby last year. Cute kid. I sent gifts, visited when I could, tried to be a decent uncle. Then the money stuff started leaking into conversations. Little comments about daycare costing more than expected. Rent getting tight. Rachel had left her part-time admin job to stay home full-time with the baby. Mark's hours got cut at school. I figured they'd downsize. That's what people do when costs pile up. Find a one-bedroom, cut the overhead, adjust. Instead, Rachel showed up at my door with a declaration. Actually, let me back up for 1 second. I forgot to mention this. When I first bought this condo 5 years ago, Rachel came by once. Walked through it and kind of wrinkled her nose. Said it was cozy, which is a polite way of saying small, and beneath her. I could never live somewhere like this, she told me. But good for you. I thought about that comment a lot the week after she showed up with her iced coffee and her big announcement. After her visit, I didn't feel angry right away, just off balance. Like the floor had tilted a little, and I was waiting to see if it would keep going. It kept going. Mom called the next morning. She had that voice. The one where people pretend they're just checking in, but they've already picked a side and are calling to read you the verdict. Said Rachel told her what happened, and I had to see it from their perspective. Baby, bills, impossible rent. The second bedroom was just sitting there while they struggled. Didn't that seem unfair? I told her it wasn't happening. She sighed like I'd confessed to something. Said we'd all talk at dinner Sunday. I didn't even know there was a Sunday dinner. By lunch, my dad called. Same speech, different delivery. He said things like, step up, and bigger picture. I reminded him I wasn't the one asking someone else to hand over their home. He told me not to be dramatic. That evening, an aunt I hadn't seen in over a year sent a text. Honey, they just need a break. You can find another place later. Like people kept spare condos in their back pockets. Then Rachel sent a long text that night about how this arrangement was temporary and for the good of the family. She attached a spreadsheet Mark had built. I'll give them this. It was thorough. Rent listed at 0. Utilities cut in half. No HOA fees listed anywhere. Nothing for repairs, nothing for maintenance. Like the building ran on gratitude and goodwill, and the radiators heated themselves out of the kindness of their little metal hearts. I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I went to the complex's public website and read the standard lease terms. Early termination fee, 3 months rent. My eyebrows went up. This wasn't just about wanting more space. This was about avoiding a penalty. I called my friend Sam, who works front desk at a local real estate office. Asked him general questions, rental application trends lately, approval rates, that kind of thing. He said there'd been a lot of denials recently. High debt, missed payments, credit scores in rough shape. He didn't name anyone. I didn't need him to. I connected the dots on my own and didn't say anything to anyone about it. Sunday came. I drove over to my parents' house. Same one we grew up in. Same peeling wallpaper in the hallway. Same couch in the living room that sank in the middle because Dad absolutely refused to replace it. The garlic bread smell hit me at the door, and for a second it almost felt normal. Then I saw the setup. Rachel and Mark were already seated on one side of the table, like a panel waiting to conduct an interview. The folder was already out. My parents hovered in the kitchen, doing these little synchronized glances, like they had a script rehearsed and were waiting for their cue. Hold on. For anyone new here, this is me, not the OP cutting in. I just need everyone to clock what this dinner actually was. Because it was not a family meal. It was a tribunal with garlic bread. They staged it. Folder on the table before he even sits down. Parents doing synchronized kitchen nodding like they rehearsed. Rachel with her I'm just being reasonable smile. Mark sitting there looking like he wandered into the wrong intervention by accident. This is a full Game of Thrones power grab, except instead of the Iron Throne, they're going after a 2-bedroom condo with a wobbly dining table and a cow magnet on the fridge. Popcorn ready. Rachel started first. Voice soft. Said they only needed the condo for a year. Maybe less, she added quickly. Depended how fast they got back on their feet. I didn't respond. She slid the folder toward me. Mark cleared his throat and said it was very organized. They'd cover utilities. No rent, obviously, since I already owned the place. Just utilities, I said, flipping through the pages. Rachel nodded like that was generous. My mom leaned in. Honey, think of the baby. She needs her own room. I looked at Rachel. You have a 3-bedroom right now. Too expensive, she said flatly. Then get a smaller place. Her mouth tightened. She asked why they should have to uproot everything when I had space sitting there unused. Because it's my home, I said. My dad sighed like he was about to deliver something from a mountain. Family working together. I had the room. They had the need. Common sense. I pointed at the folder. You wrote this like I already agreed. Did anyone think to ask me first? Silence. Rachel finally said they figured I'd be reasonable once I saw the numbers. I flipped to the budget page. No HOA fees. No repairs. Utilities cut in half. Rent at 0. I pushed the folder back across the table. Not happening. Her smile cracked. She said the second bedroom was just sitting there while they were drowning. I leaned back in my chair. I looked at your lease, I said. Rachel froze. It's public. 3 months rent if you break it early. That's what this is actually about. Mark shifted uncomfortably. Rachel's face went red. She said that was none of my business. I told her she was making it my business by showing up here with a folder and her whole family as backup. Mom frowned. Is that true? Rachel glared at me. Said we just needed a fresh start? Why was I making this so hard? Because you came to my house and announced you were moving in like I had no say, I said. Like everything I worked for doesn't count because you want an easy out. Mark said they were just trying to find something that worked for everyone. For everyone or for you two? I asked. He didn't answer. Rachel looked at Mom. Tell him this makes sense. She said it desperate. Mom hesitated. Said the baby did need a room. I cut her off. Then maybe they should have planned better instead of showing up here with a fake budget and expecting me to hand over my keys. Rachel slammed her hand on the table. We're family. Family helps each other. Family also respects each other, I said. You don't get to decide my home isn't mine anymore because you made bad financial choices. Dad said to calm down. I stood up. No. You all sat here ready to guilt trip me like I'm the bad guy for not giving up the one thing I worked for. I'm not doing it. Rachel's voice shook. So you'd rather see us homeless? You rent a 3-bedroom apartment, I said. Break the lease, downsize, move somewhere cheaper. People do it every day. But you are not moving in here. That's final. Mom looked stunned. You don't mean that. I do. This isn't a debate. I grabbed my jacket, said thanks for dinner, and walked out. As I left, I heard Rachel tell Mom I was being cold-hearted. I didn't look back. Pause for a second. I want to sit with that dinner for a moment, because she built a spreadsheet to claim this man's property, drafted timelines, printed it out. She put in real effort, but pointed all of it at someone else's condo instead of just finding a 1-bedroom like a normal person. That's not desperation. That's audacity with a tab-separated document. And when he shut it down, she pulled the homeless card while living in a 3-bedroom apartment with a rooftop deck. Nobody's sleeping under a bridge here, princess. Anyway, the family pressure keeps coming after this. And then this story takes a hard left turn into actual criminal territory. After that dinner, the family chorus went full volume. Mom with family comes first. Dad with bigger picture. Cousins I hadn't talked to in months sending texts about the baby. I stopped responding to all of it. Nothing new was being said and I wasn't changing my mind. A week passed. One evening I got home from work and noticed something at the door. Fine scratches around the lock plate. A scuff low on the wood, like something had been dragged against it lightly. I ran my finger over the marks. Could have been nothing, sure. But I'd lived here 5 years. I knew every dent and squeak in this place. That wasn't there before. It was, I think, Wednesday night when I first noticed it. Maybe Thursday. Doesn't matter. Point is, it was new. My stomach felt heavy. I went inside, locked the door, and filled out the city's online non-emergency report form. Just the basics. Possible tampering, no entry, no known suspects. Hit submit, got the confirmation email, closed the laptop. Next day, I swapped in a drill-resistant deadbolt and mounted 2 cameras. One door viewer facing the hallway and a small motion-activated unit inside covering the entryway. Both recorded in HD and pushed alerts to my phone. Total cost wasn't much. Worth every single cent, as it turned out. 2 nights, nothing. I kept checking the feeds before bed anyway, volume up on my phone. 3rd night, the phone buzzed at 2:37 a.m. Motion detected at your door. I grabbed it and opened the app. Grainy black and white hallway feed. Someone standing at my door. Hoodie up, hair sticking out the sides, shoulders hunched. Something shiny in their hand, working it around the lock. Rachel. I hit record on the app and called 911. Whispered to the dispatcher that someone was trying to break into my condo, that I had live video, gave the address. Stayed on the line. She kept working the lock like she'd done it before, like she was confident I wasn't home. The hallway lights kicked on, automatic timer, and she froze for half a second, looked over her shoulder, then went right back to jiggling the lock. Dispatcher said units were close. My heart was going way too fast. A minute later, 2 cops came into view on the hallway feed, walking fast. Rachel didn't see them until they were almost on top of her. I opened the door when they told her to step back, showed them the live feed, the tool at the lock, clear as day. They asked for her ID. She stammered something about forgetting her keys. I showed them the recording. They detained her right there in the hallway, cuffed. I wasn't smug. I wasn't even angry in that moment. I was just shaky and tired, and my brain hadn't quite caught up to what my body already knew. The officers asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes without hesitating. 5 minutes later, Mark showed up. Hair messy, sweatpants, looking like he'd sprinted over. Said it was a misunderstanding. Said she probably still thought she had a spare key from before. I told him I never gave her a spare. He ran out of explanations and just rubbed his face. Mumbled something about calling a lawyer and followed the cops out. I locked the deadbolt behind them and sat on the couch staring at nothing for a long time. The cameras kept recording until the hallway went quiet again. Okay, time out. Your host jumping in. I want to say something about this man's approach. He didn't send threatening texts, didn't blow up the family group chat, didn't show up at their apartment yelling. He quietly installed cameras, went about his week, and waited. That's the John Wick energy people don't talk about enough. Not the part where he shoots people. The part where he says nothing, prepares everything, and lets the other side walk into the consequences they built themselves. She brought a screwdriver to his door at 2:37 in the morning, and all he had to do was press record. That's not revenge. That's patience with a security system. The morning after the arrest, I took a couple hours off work. I wanted everything documented before the phone call started. First stop was the police station. Handed over the full video files. The officer said they'd pull the 911 audio from dispatch. He gave me a case number, said the footage made things pretty straightforward. When I got home, I made 2 copies of everything, one on a thumb drive, one in a locked cloud folder. Printed the incident report and filed it with my mortgage papers. Then I sent my boss a short email about a personal security situation. He wrote back that I should handle what I needed to. That was the whole exchange. By noon, my phone wouldn't stop. Mom first. How could I do this to my sister? She tried to break into my condo at 2:37 in the morning, I said. I didn't do anything. She did. Mom said I didn't have to call the police. I asked her what the better option was. Open the door and offer coffee? She said family should handle things privately. I asked her what privately meant in this specific context, because to me it sounded like pretending it didn't happen. She didn't answer that one. She just went quiet for a moment, which is its own kind of answer. Dad called 2 hours later. She has a baby. She made a mistake. Don't ruin her life over this. I told him I was asleep in my own home, and I wasn't apologizing for protecting it. He muttered something about me being cold. I hung up before I said something I definitely regret. My aunt texted that evening. Just drop the charges. I ignored it. A couple days later, a neighbor mentioned in passing that he'd heard about some old fraud case connected to somebody in the building. I looked it up out of curiosity. Court records are public if you know where to look. Rachel had a small fraud charge from 5 years back. Deferred sentence, probation, fine paid. Nothing that had messed up her life much. But it was there. I didn't tell anyone. No cousins, no group chat post, nothing. I answered the prosecutor's questions, emailed the footage when they asked for it, and kept everything boring and professional. Rachel's case moved fast. They booked her on misdemeanor charges for the break-in attempt, and the prior record made things more complicated for her at sentencing. She pled guilty to avoid a larger charge. The judge gave her 3 months and a criminal record that wasn't going away this time. Mark texted me while she was serving. Long paragraph about stress and bills and daycare costs and everything coming at them too fast at once. Said Rachel was just trying to do what parents do. I read it twice, saved it, didn't respond. Their finances hit the floor fast after that. They were still on a fixed-term lease, and when they finally broke it, the 3-month penalty arrived like a hammer. After that, they grabbed a month-to-month place at a higher rate. With Rachel not working and now carrying a record, Mark was carrying everything on a teacher's salary. 3 months later, Rachel was out. I heard through Mom they'd moved in with my parents temporarily. "That's between you and them," I said. "Not my business anymore." Mom didn't love that answer. She said the house was tense. Rachel and Mark arguing about money, Dad hating the noise. I stayed out of it. Yo, pause. I keep coming back to that spreadsheet. She made a whole spreadsheet to take this man's home. Listed rent as 0. Utilities cut in half. $0 budgeted for repairs, HOA fees, any of it. Put real effort into that document and pointed all of it at someone else's property instead of just finding something cheaper. If she'd used that energy on an actual housing search, none of the rest of this happens. But instead, she brought a spreadsheet to a guilt trip, a screwdriver to a deadbolt, and an existing fraud charge to a sentencing hearing. And now she's in her parents' living room. Not exactly the outcome the spreadsheet projected. A month after everything settled down, my dad stopped by with some mail that had been going to their address. He looked tired. Said Rachel was having a rough time. "She made her choices," I said. He nodded slowly. Didn't defend her, didn't lecture me, just handed me the stack of envelopes and left. That was the last real conversation we had about any of it. I didn't reach out to Rachel. Instead, I mailed them something. I framed a photo of my front door with the new lock installed and the camera visible in the corner, and wrote a short note underneath. "Hope you find a place that's yours for real. No insults, no swearing, just clear." 2 weeks later, Mom called. Said Rachel wanted to meet and clear the air. My first thought, she wants to yell at me. My second thought, she probably wants something again. I said I'd go. But here's the deal. My home is off the table. Nobody shows up uninvited. If she can't agree to that, there's no meeting. Mom agreed. Final update. Neutral ground, my parents' kitchen. Rachel was already sitting there when I arrived. Arms crossed, chin up, Mark next to her looking like he wanted to dissolve into the chair. I sat down across from them. She didn't waste time. She said I didn't have to call the cops. That family doesn't do that to each other. I told her she tried to break into my home. She said she was desperate, that I wouldn't listen, that I left them no choice. There was a choice, I said. Find another apartment. That's what people do. She said I had no idea what it was like. The bills, the baby, drowning in all of it. And there I was with all that space just going to waste. Space I worked for, I said. Space I paid for while you were calling it small and laughing at it 5 years ago. She rolled her eyes. Said that was different. No, I said, keeping my voice even. You treated this place like it was nothing until you needed it. Then you decided it was yours. Not asked, decided. She shot back that I could have just let them stay a few months. That I turned it into a whole production. That I ruined her record. You ruined your record, I said. You picked up that screwdriver. You showed up at 2:37 in the morning. That was your call, not mine. She leaned forward, eyes sharp. You think working a few extra hours makes you better than us? Makes you some kind of hero? I laughed, short and dry. No, I think it makes me the person who owns the place you tried to steal. Her face went red. Mark said quietly that it didn't have to go this far. It went as far as she pushed it, I said. I'm not carrying that for her. Rachel looked at me, jaw tight. One day you'll need help. Don't expect us to be there. I stood up. Good, I said. That way we're all clear. I hope you guys figure things out, but my home is off limits. No debates, no surprises. That's not changing. I walked out before she could fire back. Weeks went by after that. Mom tried to get everyone together for a couple more dinners. I told her the same thing each time. If my home comes up even once, I'm leaving. She said she understood. It didn't come up. I kept my routine. Work, gym, fixing small things around the condo on weekends. Fixed the sticky window in the living room that had been annoying me for 2 years. Painted the patchy wall in the hallway with cheap rollers and an embarrassing amount of blue tape. Put some plants on the windowsill that I fully expected to die. A cousin mentioned later that Rachel picked up a part-time job at a daycare center, and Mark was doing tutoring sessions after school. A few months after that, they found a small rental farther from the city. Older building, cheaper neighborhood, but theirs. I didn't reach out. Not angry about it. Just done. A year later, the condo looked better than it ever had. Fresh paint on every wall, not just the hallway this time. New locks on both doors. The squeaky floorboard near the bedroom, finally fixed after years of telling myself I'd get to it. I replaced the lumpy couch I'd been hauling around since college, picked up a secondhand rug that didn't clash with the curtains for once. The plants on the windowsill were somehow still alive. A couple even had new leaves coming in, which honestly surprised me every time I noticed. I talked to them sometimes when I was bored and had nothing else going on. I don't know if that does anything. Probably not. There was one Saturday afternoon where I just sat at my desk with a cold coffee going warm beside me, doing absolutely nothing for like an hour. Not watching anything, not on my phone, just sitting in the quiet. And I remember thinking this was the most expensive hour I'd ever had. Not because anything was costing money, but because it took 6 years of double shifts and skipped vacations and instant noodles to buy that 1 hour of just sitting there without a single thing to worry about. Felt worth it. Coming home felt different after all of it. Not just because the place looked better, because it was mine in a way it hadn't been before the whole mess started. I'd hit the deadbolt after work and feel it in my shoulders. That weight just gone. No guilt trips, no phone calls telling me I was selfish, no one showing up uninvited with a folder or a screwdriver. The quiet wasn't lonely, it was steady. For the first time in a long time, I could sit on the couch with the TV off and not be waiting for the next fight. That's what I'd been working toward the whole time. I just didn't know that's what it was called until I finally had it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done at that dinner table? Would you have pressed charges or let it go? Look, he's not perfect. Early on, he let his family guilt him for years without drawing a hard line. But the second someone brought a spreadsheet to take his home, and then a screwdriver to follow through, he didn't yell, didn't beg, didn't fold. He documented everything, called 911, pressed charges, and kept his mouth shut through all the noise after. The family spent months calling him selfish. But there's nothing selfish about holding on to something you bled for. That's just not bending. Drop your take in the comments. What would you have done at that dinner table? And if you're not subscribed yet, hit the button. Next one's already loaded. We didn't order for you, my dad said, handing me bread while my brother enjoyed his $400 steak. His wife sneered, "Be grateful you're invited." I stayed silent. When the waiter came, I stood up and said, "Send the bill to the ones who ate." Hey Reddit, I'm Damien, 35 male, and for the last 17 years, I've been my family's personal checking account. Yup, you heard that right, 17 freaking years. Grab your popcorn. This is gonna be long and chaotic. I work in pharmaceutical sales, territory manager for the Midwest region. The job pays embarrassingly well. Base salary around $95,000, plus commission and bonuses that can add another $40,000 to $50,000 in a good year. I drive a paid-off Honda, live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment, and buy my furniture from estate sales. My coworkers think I'm cheap. My family thinks I'm broke. I never corrected either assumption. My brother Colby, 30 male, is the golden child, the success story, the one my parents brag about at every family gathering. He runs what he calls a digital marketing agency. From what I can tell, it's him and 2 freelancers creating Instagram ads for local businesses and charging them criminal amounts for basic services. But he's got an office in a trendy part of downtown Minneapolis, drives a leased Audi, and wears expensive watches that he forgets to take off in photos. Colby married Chloe 4 years ago. She's a real piece of work, former sorority president turned lifestyle influencer with 8,000 Instagram followers. Doesn't work. Just posts pictures of herself drinking expensive coffee and talking about manifestation and abundance. My mom treats her like visiting royalty. They live in a renovated brownstone in Linden Hills with heated floors and one of those chef's kitchens. Their mortgage is over $3,200 a month. I know because I've covered it twice when Colby's business had cash flow issues. I was 11 when I figured out how things worked. Colby was 6, and my parents threw him this massive birthday party at a trampoline park, rented the whole place, hired a guy to dress up as Spider-Man, and had a custom cake. I asked my mom if I could bring my best friend Matt. She got this look on her face. Annoyed. like I'd asked for something unreasonable. She said, "Damien, today isn't about you. Don't be selfish." I stayed home. My dad handed me $15 and told me to order pizza. I remember sitting on the floor of our living room, eating alone, hearing my mom's voicemail fill up with messages from relatives telling her what an amazing party it was. Nobody mentioned I wasn't there. Nobody asked why. That became the blueprint. My college fund evaporated the year Colby wanted to go to a private high school with a lacrosse team. My graduation party got canceled because Colby had a playoff game. When I saved up and bought my first car, a used Civic I paid after working overnight shifts at a distribution warehouse, my dad actually got angry. Said I made him look bad. Said people would think he couldn't provide for his family. 3 months later, he bought Colby a used Jeep and told everyone he'd been saving for years to surprise him. I learned my role early. I wasn't the son you celebrated. When my parents needed $6,500 for emergency roof repairs, I sent a check. When Colby's wedding venue required a $12,000 deposit and he was short, I covered it. When Chloe's car got totaled and their insurance didn't cover the gap, I wired $2,800. When my dad's medical bills from a minor surgery piled up, I paid them $4,200. Nobody thanked me. Nobody asked how I managed it. My dad would take credit, shaking hands at church and accepting compliments about being such a provider. Colby would post pictures of his life on social media, talking about hard work and blessings. Chloe would tag my mom in photos of expensive brunches, thanking her for being so generous. I became a ghost. My friend Evan would tell me I was getting used. We'd grab lunch every couple weeks, and I'd casually mention helping my family with something. He'd shake his head, call me a doormat, tell me they'd never stop taking as long as I kept giving. I'd change the subject, because part of me believed that if I just gave enough, eventually they'd see me. Eventually I'd matter. 17 years. That's how long I believed that lie. 4 months ago, my mom called. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I was wrapping up a meeting with a hospital administrator when my phone buzzed. She was using her cheerful voice. She said my dad wanted to take the whole family to dinner Saturday night. Said it was important. Said Colby and Chloe had exciting news to share. I already knew what that meant. I thought about saying no, but I knew what would happen. My mom would send paragraph-long texts about family being important. My dad would leave a voicemail calling me ungrateful. Colby would post something about how hard it is when people don't support your success. It was easier to just go. I said yes. Mom told me the details. Saturday, 7:30 p.m., someplace called Monarch Prime. I'd never heard of it. After we hung up, I looked it up. It was one of those steakhouses where businessmen take clients to close deals. Reservation only. Dress code strictly enforced. The menu wasn't even online, but the reviews mentioned entrees starting at $65 and steaks going north of $200. I knew exactly how this would play out. My dad would sit at the head of the table ordering the most expensive items, making toasts, playing the generous patriarch. Then, when the bill came, he'd catch my eye. That look. The one that said, "You've got this, right?" And I'd pay, like always. While he accepted the praise, I called Evan that night, told him about the dinner. He laughed. In that way you laugh when someone tells you they're about to make the same mistake for the 100th time. He said, "How much do you think this one's going to cost you?" I said, "Couple grand, probably." He said, "You know they're never going to stop, right?" "Not as long as you keep paying." I said, "Yeah, I know." But I didn't know. Not really. Not yet. Saturday came around. I spent the morning at the gym, then grabbed lunch at this Vietnamese place I like, where you can get a massive bowl of pho for $8. Spent the afternoon catching up on work emails and watching college football. Around 6:45, I changed into dress pants and a button-down. I drove to Monarch Prime. The restaurant was in the North Loop, one of those converted warehouse buildings with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. I pulled up, handed my keys to a kid in a vest, and walked inside. The hostess was wearing all black and had the kind of posture they teach you in finishing school. I gave her my dad's name. She smiled and led me through the dining room. Everything was dark wood and leather, dim lighting, quiet conversations. The kind of place where the silence itself cost money. They'd reserved a corner table near the windows overlooking the city. I was the first one there. Sat down facing the door, ordered water, didn't touch the bread they brought out. My family arrived 15 minutes late. Together! My mom was wearing a dress I'd never seen. My dad had on a full suit. Colby and Chloe looked like they'd stepped out of a Neiman Marcus catalog. Colby's suit probably cost more than my rent. They walked past me toward the table. My mom was waving at someone across the room. My dad was scanning the restaurant. Colby was on his phone. Chloe was adjusting her hair. Nobody said hello? Nobody acknowledged I existed. They settled into their seats, shrugging off jackets, setting down purses. My mom leaned toward Chloe and whispered something that made them both laugh. Colby ordered a drink before looking at the menu. My dad flagged the waiter and started asking about the drink list. I sat there, hands folded, waiting for someone to notice me. The waiter came with drinks, poured them into 4 glasses. My parents, Colby's, Chloe's, skipped mine completely. My dad didn't notice. Then the menus arrived. Heavy leather-bound things with gold lettering. I opened mine and went straight to the prices. Appetizers were $28 to $55. Cheapest entree was $58 for chicken. There was a pasta for $48. I figured that was my best move. Filling enough, cheap enough not to draw attention. My dad leaned back without even opening his menu. That's when I knew he was going big. He said, "Order whatever you want. Tonight's special." I looked back at my menu, found the pasta again. That would work. The waiter came back, pen ready. My dad went first. Ordered the ribeye, the biggest one they had, with truffle butter and roasted bone marrow. My mom ordered scallops with caviar and lobster tail. Colby and Chloe rattled off their orders. The massive porterhouse, the filet, the whole lobster appetizer, extra sides. Then everyone looked at me. The waiter looked at me. I opened my mouth to order the pasta. My dad cut me off. He said, "Damien doesn't need much. He's trying to save money." He reached across the table, grabbed the bread basket. It was full of warm sourdough rolls with butter. He slid it toward me. The sound of the basket scraping against the tablecloth was loud in the sudden quiet. He said, "We didn't order enough for you anyway. This should be plenty." The table went silent. The kind that happens when someone gets humiliated in public. I stared at the bread basket. My mom looked down at her napkin. Colby smirked, glancing at Chloe. She had this satisfied little smile, like she was watching something entertaining. She said, "Honestly, you should be grateful your dad even invited you." The waiter stood frozen. His pen hadn't moved. He looked at me, then at my dad, trying to figure out if this was a joke. I shook my head slightly. He stepped back. I pulled the basket toward me, tore off a piece of bread, chewed it slowly. It tasted like nothing. My dad went back to talking. Something about a rental property investment. My mom asked Chloe about baby names. Apparently that was the big news they were expecting. Colby checked his phone, scrolling with one hand, drinking with the other. I ate another piece of bread. And another. The basket emptied. Nobody offered me anything else. The lobster came out. Colby and Chloe tore into it, cracking shells, commenting how good it was. My mom took photos. My dad poured more drinks. When the entrees arrived, the waiter placed massive plates in front of everyone except me. My dad's steak was the size of a small roast. Colby's porterhouse hung off the plate. Chloe cut into her filet and went on about how it was the best thing she'd ever eaten. My mom ate her scallops with her eyes closed. I sat there with empty hands, watching them eat, thinking about numbers. The roof repair I'd paid for, Colby's wedding, my dad's surgery bills, my mom's credit card debt I'd cleared twice, Colby's mortgage payments, twice. The numbers added up in my head while they chewed $400 steaks, and I sat there with a breadbasket. Colby looked at me. "You know, Damien, if you actually applied yourself, maybe you could afford to eat like an adult." Chloe laughed. Actually laughed? My mom smirked. My dad didn't even look up. I nodded, said nothing, just folded my hands and waited. Let them enjoy this as it lasts. Then dessert came. Some chocolate thing the size of a softball served with 4 spoons. They devoured it in minutes. I watched. When they finished, my dad patted his stomach. "That was perfect. We need to do this more often." The waiter appeared, holding a small black leather folder. He walked past them all and stopped next to me, placed it in front of me. I opened it. $3,184. I stared at the number. $3,184. For a meal I didn't eat. Then I stood up. The chair scraped loud enough that people at nearby tables looked over. I closed the folder, slid it across the table toward my father, looked at the waiter and said, "Give it to the people who actually ate." They all went dead silent. Then my mother asked, "Excuse me?" "Yeah, excuse you," I replied, then I walked away. I walked through the restaurant, past the bar, past the host stand, out the front doors into the October cold. My hands were steady. I felt calm. Weirdly, impossibly calm. Like I'd been holding my breath for 17 years, and finally exhaled. Got to my car and sat behind the wheel. Didn't start the engine. Just sat there in the parking garage for a minute. Inside, I knew what was happening. The waiter was standing at the table holding that bill. My dad was staring at the total, face going red. My mom was looking around nervously, worried about what people were thinking. Colby was probably fumbling for his wallet, realizing his credit card wouldn't cover half of this. My phone started buzzing. Text from Mom. Get back here right now. Dad. Don't you dare humiliate us like this. Fix this immediately. Colby. Are you kidding me? You're embarrassing us. Chloe. You're pathetic. Grow up and pay the bill. I read each one. Let them sit there on my screen. Then I opened my contacts and blocked them all. Each one of them. Click, click, click. I started the car. Drove home slowly, taking the long route through downtown, past the river, past the old neighborhoods. No rush. Nobody waiting. Nobody calling me. I parked at my building, walked up 3 flights of stairs. I stepped inside and sat on my couch in the dim light. For 17 years, I'd believed that staying quiet was the same as keeping peace. That paying for their meals, their bills, their emergencies was what family required. That if I just gave enough, eventually they'd see me. That I'd feel I'm good enough. But sitting there with that bread basket in front of me while those bastards ate $400 steaks, I finally understood. Years of pent-up guilt and patience finally snapped. I was never their son or their brother. So I opened my banking app, started scrolling through automatic payments I'd set up over the years. Dad's yacht club membership, $385 a month. Colby's business loan payment, $850 a month. Mom's spa membership, $175 a month. Parents' timeshare in Scottsdale, $625 a month. I canceled every single one. Each confirmation felt like another weightlifting. Moved to my credit cards. Found authorized users. Colby was on 2 cards, Dad on 1, Mom on another. Removed them all. Locked the accounts, changed every password. Then I opened my email. Searched for invoice, receipt, payment. Years of history appeared. I'd paid for trips I wasn't invited on. Birthdays I never attended. Renovations on houses where I'd never been welcome. Created a folder. Evidence. Started moving everything in. Then I went deeper. I pulled up pending charges on my credit cards. Found 6 I hadn't authorized. Chloe at Saks Fifth Avenue, 2 days before the dinner. Colby at a golf club pro shop. Mom at Nordstrom. Dad at a luxury car detail shop. 2 more from Colby's business account. $2,400 total for marketing expenses. I disputed every single one. Filed fraud reports. The bank sent confirmations within minutes. The charges would be reversed. They'd all get notifications. Perfect. I searched my email for recurring payments. Found the Scottsdale timeshare. My parents used it 3 weeks a year. I'd been paying the monthly fee for 6 years. The next payment was in 5 days. Called the company. Canceled it. They refunded my deposit. Found another invoice. Colby's business loan. He'd taken out $38,000 to expand 2 years ago. I'd been covering the monthly payment ever since because he said he'd pay me back when things stabilized. They never did. Called the bank. Explained I was no longer financially responsible. They updated the records. All future correspondence would go to Colby. By Sunday night, I'd canceled 15 recurring payments. Total monthly savings, $3,900. $3,900 I'd been sending every month to people who treated me like a stranger. Monday morning, I drafted an email to my extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, who'd probably start getting calls from my parents soon. I'm dealing with a personal matter and need space. Please don't contact me on behalf of my parents or Colby. I'll reach out when I'm ready. Sent it to 22 people. Then set up email filters. Anything containing my parents' names, Colby's name, or Chloe's name went straight to a folder I'd never check. I called Evan. Told him everything. He was quiet for a second. Then he started laughing. Holy hell, Damien. You actually did it. I said, yeah, I did. He said, finally, man. Took you long enough. How do you feel? I thought about it. Free. Tuesday afternoon, they showed up at my building. I was heading out to grab lunch when I saw them in the lobby. All 4 of them. Standing near the F-Stant desk, talking to Stan, my building manager. Dad's voice was loud. This is a family emergency. We need to see him immediately. Mom had this worried look plastered on her face. Colby stood with his arms crossed, jaw tight. Chloe looked annoyed. I stopped just inside the hallway. Took a breath. Considered turning around. But no. This was my building. My home. They were the intruders. I walked forward. Stan saw me first. Mr. O'Brien, these folks say they're your family. They're asking for access to your unit. I looked at them. I don't want them in my building. Mom stepped forward. Damien, please. We just want to talk. I shook my head. No. Dad's face went red. This is ridiculous. You embarrassed us. You left us with a $3,000 bill we couldn't pay. You've been ignoring us. You owe us an explanation. I looked him dead in the eye. I don't owe you anything. Figure your shit out. Colby stepped closer. Don't you dare talk to your father like this. You need to grow up and fix this. I said, you are not my problem anymore, people. I am done with you. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Damien, how can you do this? What happened to you? And something inside me snapped. What happened to me? I said, apparently I am not letting you walk over me anymore. I've dealt with your BS for years. Helped all of you because I was stupid enough to think you saw me as a son. You don't. You see me as a wallet. Now that wallet is closed. Now get the hell out of here. They froze. Had the audacity to look hurt too. That's not true. Dad said. I cut him off. Then why did you hand me a bread basket while everyone else ate $400 steaks? Why did Chloe tell me I should be grateful you even invited me? Why have I been paying for your lives for years while you never even say thank you? The lobby went dead silent. Stan shifted uncomfortably. A couple residents walked through, trying not to stare. I canceled the payments. All of them. Removed you from my credit cards. Disputed the charges you made without asking. I'm done. Now again, sort your shit out and leave me alone. You can't do that, he yelled. You don't get to cut us off like this. I smiled. I just did. Sue me. Colby's voice went sharp. You're gonna regret this, Damien. I looked at him. I'm really not. Turned to Stan. Please make sure they leave. He nodded. Stepped toward my family. You folks need to go. I walked past them. Out the front door. I heard my dad shout my name. Didn't stop. Got in my car, drove away. I didn't look back once. That night, I did the math. Pulled up every receipt, every bank statement, every invoice going back 17 years, built a spreadsheet. When I finished, the number made my jaw drop. $284,000 I'd given them over 17 years. That was a house. That was retirement money. I broke it down. The spreadsheet was 14 pages long when I printed it. Over the next week, I watched the fallout through email. Everything went to that filtered folder, but I checked it once, just to see. Dad's yacht club sent a suspension notice. Membership terminated for non-payment. He had 30 days to settle the balance or lose access permanently. The Scottsdale timeshare company charged the $1,900 cancellation fee to Dad's credit card. He'd have to pay it or face collections. The bank sent Colby a notice about his business loan. First missed payment. If he didn't catch up within 15 days, they'd start default proceedings. One by one, the luxuries I'd been funding disappeared. My uncle sent an email. Said Dad was struggling financially. Said Mom was devastated. Said I should reconsider because family forgives. I didn't respond. A cousin messaged me on Facebook. Said I was tearing the family apart. Said I was being cruel over one dinner. I blocked her. But they weren't done. These people know nothing about boundaries, and honestly, it was all my fault from the beginning. They went way too far. 2 weeks after the dinner, I came home from work to find my car keyed. Deep scratches down both sides, from headlight to taillight. The word JERK carved into the driver's side door. I stood there in the parking garage, took photos from every angle, filed a police report. The cop who showed up said, unless I had camera footage or witnesses, they probably couldn't do much. I knew who did it. Couldn't prove it, but I knew. 3 days later, someone slashed 2 of my tires. I installed a dash cam that night. Front and rear facing, motion activated. It cost me $400, but it was worth it. The next incident was my apartment. I came home to find paint splattered across my door. Red paint dripping down to the carpet. The word traitor in sloppy letters. Stan, the building manager, was angry. Reviewed the hallway cameras. The footage showed a figure in a hoodie and mask, but you couldn't make out a face. It happened at 2 a.m. when nobody was around. I filed another police report. The cop, same one from before, started looking more interested. Said it was clearly targeted harassment. Asked if I had any idea who might be doing this. I told him about my family, about the dinner, about cutting them off. He took notes. Said I should consider documenting everything and maybe looking into a restraining order if it continued. And it did. Someone called my office pretending to be a client, made a formal complaint about me. Complete fabrication. Said I'd mishandled their account, lost them money. My boss called me in, concerned. I explained the situation, showed him the police reports, the pattern of harassment. He believed me, but I could tell he was worried. Then they went after my reputation. Someone created a fake Facebook profile using my name and photo. Started posting bizarre rants about how I'd abandoned my sick mother, stole from my brother's business, and refused to help my family in their time of need. Friends started texting me, asking if I was okay. I reported the profile. Facebook took it down after 3 days, but the damage was done. I called Evan, told him everything that was happening. He said, "Dude, you need to lawyer up. These people are insane." He gave me the number for his attorney, a woman named Julia, who specialized in family law and restraining orders. I called her the next day. We met at her office downtown. I brought everything. The spreadsheet showing $284,000 in payments. The police reports. The whole thing. She looked through everything carefully. Then she said, "Damien, this is pretty clear-cut harassment. We can file for a restraining order. But I want you to understand, this is going to make things worse before they get better. Are you ready for that?" "I'm ready," she nodded. "Good. Let's make them face consequences." We filed for restraining orders against all 4 of them. The petitions were comprehensive, detailed every incident, attached all the evidence, police reports, photos, the spreadsheet showing financial exploitation, screenshots of threatening messages from extended family members that referenced conversations with my parents. The court date was set for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, things got worse. Someone spray-painted my apartment building's exterior wall. Giant letters. "Damien O'Brien is a thief." Stan was furious. Building security footage caught a dark SUV pulling up at 3 a.m., someone getting out, doing the damage, then leaving. The plates were obscured with mud. But I knew that SUV. Colby drove a dark blue Audi Q7. I sent the footage to Julia and the police. Then Chloe made a mistake. She posted on her Instagram story. It was a photo of the vandalism on my building with the caption, "When karma comes for people who abandon family." I screenshot it before it disappeared. Sent it to Julia. She smiled when she saw it. They're making this too easy. The harassment continued. Someone filed a false report with my HOA, claiming I was running an illegal business from my apartment. The HOA board investigated, found nothing, but I had to attend a hearing and defend myself. Someone left a dead rat on my doormat. I took photos, filed another police report. Then Colby showed up at my office. I was in a meeting with a hospital purchasing director when my assistant knocked on the door, looking uncomfortable. She said someone named Colby O'Brien was in the lobby demanding to see me, claiming it was a family emergency. I excused myself from the meeting, walked out to the lobby. Colby was standing there in jeans and a wrinkled button-down, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was messy. He saw me and his face twisted. "We need to talk," I said. "No, we don't." He stepped closer. "You're destroying this family. Mom's on anxiety medication because of you. Dad had to sell his boat. My business is failing because you pulled the loan payment. Chloe is pregnant and stressed out of her mind. That's not my problem." His voice got louder. "You owe us, Damien." "I don't owe you shit. You need to leave now." "Or what?" I pulled out my phone. Started recording. Or I call the police and add another incident to the restraining order petition. His face went pale. He looked at the phone, then at me. "You're really doing this. You did this. All of you. Now leave." He turned and walked out. I watched him get in his SUV, the same one from the security footage, and peel out of the parking lot. I sent the video to Julia immediately. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was my mom, crying. "Damien, please, your father had to take out a loan. We need help. We need you." I said, "No, Mom, move on. I am not your bank anymore." "That's not fair," I said. "You let Colby and Chloe mock me. You've used me for 17 years and never once asked how I was doing. Now you're vandalizing my property and harassing me at work. And you want to talk about fair?" She was quiet for a long moment. "If you don't help us, we're going to lose the house." "Then you'll lose the house." "How can you be so cruel?" "I learned from the best," I said. Then I hung up and blocked the number. The court date arrived, and it was beautiful. The courthouse was cold and impersonal. Julia met me in the hallway outside the courtroom. She was carrying 2 briefcases full of evidence. She said, "They're here, all 4 of them. They've got a lawyer too, guy named Preston Ward. He's going to try to paint you as vindictive and financially controlling. But don't worry, we're going to bury him." We walked into the courtroom. My family was sitting on the other side with their attorney, middle-aged guy in an expensive suit, looking confident. The judge was a woman in her 60s. She had a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. The hearing started. Preston Ward went first, trying to paint me as this controlling son who'd financially manipulated my family for years, then suddenly cut them off without warning. He claimed the vandalism was unproven, that the fake Facebook profile could have been created by anyone, and that my family just wanted to reconcile. Then Julia stood up and destroyed them. She walked the judge through the entire spreadsheet, $284,000 in payments over 17 years. Showed documentation of the dinner at Monarch Prime, where I'd been handed a bread basket while they ordered over $3,000 worth of food. Showed the immediate harassment that started the moment I cut them off financially. The keyed car, the slashed tires, the vandalism, the fake social media, the dead rat, Colby showing up at my workplace. She presented the security footage showing Colby's SUV at my building the night someone spray-painted the exterior. Showed Chloe's Instagram story celebrating the vandalism with that smug caption about karma. Then came the financial records. Every unauthorized credit card charge, every canceled payment, every disputed transaction. Preston Ward tried objecting, claiming financial history wasn't relevant to a harassment case. The judge shut him down immediately and told him she'd decide what was relevant. Julia kept going. Proved Colby had filed false complaints. The HOA report, the fake client complaint at my work, showed how the harassment had escalated over 5 weeks in a clear pattern of retaliation. Then she played the video of Colby at my office, getting in my face, threatening me. When she finished, the judge sat there for a moment, looking at my family with this expression of complete disgust. My dad couldn't keep his mouth shut. Preston Ward tried to stop him, but Dad stood up and launched into this whole speech about how he'd raised me, given me everything, and now I was abandoning the family over one dinner, one mistake. He actually said that. The judge let him talk for about 30 seconds before cutting him off. Asked him point blank if he'd handed me a bread basket while everyone else ate expensive steaks. He stammered and tried to call it a misunderstanding. She asked if I'd paid for the dinner. He admitted I hadn't, that they'd had to cover it themselves after I left. Then she pulled out the financial documentation showing the $284,000 I'd paid over the years, and asked if that was accurate. Dad's face went red. Started backpedaling, saying I'd offered to help, and they'd never forced me to pay for anything. She flipped through the evidence one more time, then looked up. Her voice was ice cold when she announced she was granting the restraining order. All 4 of them were prohibited from contacting me directly or indirectly. They couldn't come within 500 feet of my home, my workplace, or my vehicle. The order would stay in effect for 2 years. My mom started crying. Dad looked like he'd been slapped. Colby's face twisted with rage. Chloe stared at the floor. And here's the better part. The judge added that she was ordering them to pay restitution for property damage. Said we'd submit an itemized list and the court would review it to determine the final amount. The hearing was over. Julia turned to me, smiling. That went well. I nodded. Honestly, I just felt tired. We walked out of the courtroom. My family was in the hallway, huddled with Preston Ward. My dad saw me, started to say something. Julia stepped between us. Don't. You're under a court order now. Walk away. They walked away. Julia and I stood there for a moment. She asked, Are you okay? I'm great, I replied. She nodded. Now comes the fun part. We make them pay for what they did. The restitution hearing was set for 6 weeks later. In the meantime, Julia hired a forensic accountant to go through everything. Every vandalism incident. Every property damage claim, every provable expense related to their harassment. The accountant was a guy named Tom Rogers, looked like someone's dad, but had the predatory instincts of a shark. He went through my records like he was investigating financial fraud. He calculated car repair for keying and tire slashing, building exterior cleaning and repainting, door replacement and hallway carpet cleaning, dash cam installation, security system upgrade for my apartment, lost wages from missing work for police reports and court appearances, legal fees, emotional distress. He said we could argue this. Total, $20,750. But Tom said we should go bigger. He said we could include the fraudulent credit card charges they'd made before I cut them off, the ones I'd disputed. That added another $5,690. And he said we could argue for punitive damages based on the pattern of harassment. Julia agreed. We submitted a claim for $32,000. My family's lawyer tried to fight it. Claimed the amounts were inflated, claimed emotional distress wasn't quantifiable, and that I was trying to financially ruin them. The hearing was in front of the same judge. Tom testified first, walked the judge through every single expense, line by line, showed receipts for everything, showed police reports that matched up with the dates. Everything. Preston Ward tried poking holes during cross-examination. Tom didn't budge. Had documentation for everything. Then Julia called me to the stand. I walked through the whole story. 17 years of being the family ATM, the dinner, the harassment that followed when I finally said no. Talked about how it affected my work, my mental health, and my ability to feel safe in my own home. Then Colby took the stand. Preston had advised against it. You could see it on his face, but Colby insisted. Got up there and immediately started this rant about how I'd always been jealous of him, how I couldn't handle that he was more successful, how I'd manipulated our parents into thinking I was the victim. Julia just let him hang himself with his own words for a solid 5 minutes. Then she asked one simple question. Did you vandalize your brother's property? No, I didn't. Julia showed the security footage. Is that your vehicle? Colby froze. It looks like mine, but I let someone borrow it that night. What friend? I don't remember. Right. When testimony wrapped, the judge didn't waste time deliberating. She announced she was awarding me $24,000 in damages and restitution. The amount covered documented property damage, lost wages, legal fees, and emotional distress. The four of them would split it equally, $6,000 each. Payment due within 90 days, or she'd authorize wage garnishment. My dad jumped up, started protesting that they couldn't afford it. The judge shut it down, gavel down, done. I walked out of that courthouse with Julia beside me. She smiled. They're going to have to sell things. Downsize. Actually face consequences for once. I nodded. Good. 3 months later, I got a check in the mail. $24,000. Certified check from an attorney's trust account. They'd paid. I deposited it, then I took half of it and donated it to a financial literacy nonprofit that helps young people learn about budgeting and avoiding toxic financial relationships. The other half I kept. Used some of it to take a 2-week trip to Japan, something I'd always wanted to do, but never did. I didn't post about it on social media. Didn't tell anyone except Evan. Just went. Ate incredible food. Saw temples. Walked through cities where nobody knew me. When I got back, my apartment felt different. Lighter. The restraining order was still in effect. Nobody had contacted me. Nobody had violated it. I changed my phone number just to be safe. Told Evan and a few close friends. Nobody else. At work, things improved. My boss had been supportive through everything, and I'd worked hard to prove the drama wouldn't affect my performance. I finished the year 15% over quota. Got a bonus. Life moved forward. I still think about that night at Monarch Prime sometimes. The breadbasket, the look on their faces when I walked away from that bill, the panic they must have felt. But mostly I think about the moment in my car afterward, sitting in the dark parking garage, blocking their numbers one by one, the quiet that followed. That was the moment I chose myself. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. My dad said I was lucky to have this job when I asked for a raise. After 3 years running his company without one, he refused, then hired my loser golden brother for 3 times my salary. So I quit. But next week I got lucky with a competitor offering 40% more. He was less lucky when 3 other people followed me out, and now they're facing bankruptcy and begging me to come back. All right, Reddit. Strap in because this story is about family business betrayal, golden child syndrome on steroids, and the most satisfying career move I've ever made. It's also about watching karma work faster than Amazon Prime delivery. So I'm 29, been working at my dad's commercial HVAC company since I was 22. Started right out of college with a business degree and an HVAC certification I got on the side because I actually wanted to understand the industry I was getting into. Novel concept, I know. My dad owns SCS, does commercial HVAC installation and maintenance for office buildings, hospitals, schools, the whole 9 yards. When I started, it was pulling in about $8 million a year with 45 employees. Let me paint you a picture of how this family dynamic works. My younger brother Derek, 26, is the golden freaking child. Always has been. This dude coasted through life on charm and our parents' wallet. Switched majors 4 times in college. Started in business, switched to communications, then marketing, then sports management. Took 6 years to graduate with a degree in sports management from a party school nobody's heard of, where the main qualification was showing up drunk to tailgates. His big career move after graduation? Worked as a brand ambassador. Handed out free samples for an energy drink company for 8 months before getting fired for showing up hungover too many times. Then, he consulted for a buddy's startup that failed within 6 months. Then, he tried to launch his own lifestyle brand, selling overpriced gym apparel with motivational quotes. That lasted about 3 months before he gave up. Last I heard before he joined Sterling, he was doing social media marketing for a local restaurant chain, which mostly involved taking pictures of food and posting them on Instagram. He got let go from that too, when they realized his 50,000 Instagram followers were mostly bots he'd paid for, and weren't actually driving any business. But according to our parents, Derek was finding himself and exploring his options, and would definitely land somewhere perfect eventually. Meanwhile, I was grinding 60-hour weeks and getting asked when I was going to do something meaningful with my degree. The favoritism wasn't subtle. Never had been. Growing up, Derek got a new car for his 16th birthday. I got to share mom's old minivan and pay for my own gas. Derek's college was fully paid. Tuition, housing, spending money, the works. I got partial tuition coverage and had to work part-time plus take out loans for the rest. Derek's spring break trips to Cancun? Funded. My need for a new laptop for classes? Can't you just use the library computers? When Derek graduated, finally after 6 years, they threw him this huge party at a nice restaurant. Invited like 40 people. When I graduated on time with honors and a job lined up, we went to Olive Garden. Just the four of us. Dad spent the whole dinner talking about some deal he was working on. And here's the thing that really drove it home. When I started at Sterling, working my ass off, learning the business, Dad would constantly point out every mistake I made. That's not how we do things here, son. You need to think more strategically. Stop trying to change things just to change them. But when Derek freaked up at his various jobs, oh, that company didn't deserve him anyway. They didn't recognize his potential. It's their loss. Meanwhile, I was busting my ass from day one. Started in the warehouse doing inventory and logistics, then moved to project coordination, then operations management. By year 2, I was essentially running the entire day-to-day operation while my dad handled sales and big client relationships. And here's the thing, I was freaking good at it. When I took over operations, we were constantly behind schedule, bleeding money on inefficient routing, and our customer satisfaction scores were hovering around 72%. Our techs were driving all over the state with no real logic to their routes. We had guys driving past job sites to get to other job sites, racking up insane fuel costs and wasted time. Parts inventory was a disaster. We'd either have way too much of stuff we didn't need or run out of critical components right when we needed them. Within 6 months, I restructured our entire dispatch system, implemented new project management software that actually worked, not the garbage system Dad had bought from his golf buddy, and reorganized our field teams by specialty instead of geography. Suddenly, our commercial guys weren't wasting time on residential calls. Our installation crews weren't getting pulled off jobs to do emergency repairs. Everything ran smoother. Customer satisfaction shot up to 94%. We cut our overtime costs by 30% while actually improving response times. Turns out when you don't have guys driving 3 hours each way to job sites, they can actually finish work during regular hours. Our safety incident rate dropped to almost 0 because I actually gave a shit about proper training and equipment instead of just buying the cheapest gear possible. I also completely revamped our vendor relationships. Dad had been overpaying for parts for years because he was loyal to suppliers who'd been screwing us on pricing. I brought in competitive bidding, negotiated bulk purchase agreements, and built relationships with manufacturers instead of just going through distributors. Saved us probably $300,000 a year just on materials costs. The preventive maintenance contracts I set up became a huge revenue stream. Instead of just responding to emergencies, we had scheduled service agreements with buildings all over the city. Steady, predictable income. Clients loved it because their systems never broke down. We loved it because we could schedule work efficiently instead of scrambling for emergency calls. I brought in the software systems that let us track everything: job costs, technician productivity, parts usage, customer history. Dad had been running the business off paper schedules and gut feelings. I gave us actual data to make decisions with. By year 3, this year, I'd helped grow the company to $14 million in annual revenue. We were up to 68 employees. I'd brought in 3 major hospital contracts that were worth about $2 million annually combined. The school district deal I landed would run for 5 years and included maintenance contracts for 23 buildings. That alone was worth $4 million over the contract term. I was working 60 to 70-hour weeks minimum, running operational meetings every Monday morning, handling vendor negotiations, personally overseeing our 3 largest installation projects, taking emergency 2 a.m. service calls when our on-duty tech couldn't handle it because I actually knew how to troubleshoot complex systems, interviewing and training new hires, reviewing financials, planning expansion. I was doing the job of at least 3 people, and getting paid less than a first-year operations manager at any other company in the industry. And here's what I was getting paid for all this: $62,000 a year. Yeah, you read that right. $62 grand to run a $14 million operation. No bonuses, no profit sharing, no equity stake, just a salary that wouldn't even cover a decent apartment in most cities. I'd asked for raises twice before. First time after my first year, Dad said, "Let's see how year 2 goes." Second time after year 2, he said, "Money's tight right now. Maybe next year." Which was bullshit, because I'd seen the financials. We'd had our most profitable year ever. So 3 months ago, I decided to grow a spine and asked for what I actually deserved. Made a whole presentation. Pulled together 3 years of data showing exactly how much value I'd added. Comparison salaries for operations managers at similar-sized companies in our industry. Average $95,000 to $120,000. Documentation of every major achievement, every contract I'd helped secure, every cost savings initiative I'd implemented. I went into his office on a Tuesday morning. He was reading the newspaper and drinking coffee, doing his usual Lord of the Manor routine. "Dad, got a minute? Want to talk about my compensation?" He didn't even look up from the sports section. "Your what now?" "My salary. I've been here 3 years, haven't had a raise, and I think it's time we discuss bringing my pay in line with industry standards and my actual responsibilities." That got his attention. He put down the newspaper, leaned back in his chair with this amused little smirk. "Industry standards? Son, you're working for family. That's worth more than money." Deep breath. Stay professional. I understand that, but I'm also running the entire operation of a company doing $14 million a year for $62,000. That's not sustainable long term. Sustainable? He actually laughed. "You're lucky to have this job. You know how many kids your age would kill to work somewhere their old man could teach them the business? You're getting an education here money can't buy. I've been getting an education for 3 years, while increasing revenue by 75% and improving literally every operational metric we track. I'm not asking for unreasonable. I'm asking for fair." He stood up, walked to his window overlooking the warehouse floor. Classic power move. "You want to know what fair is? Fair is, I gave you a shot when you had 0 experience. Fair is, I'm setting you up to eventually take over this company. Fair is, you've got job security most people your age don't have. And you're bitching about salary? I'm not bitching, I'm negotiating. There's a difference. Here's a negotiation for you." He turned back to face me. "You can keep your current salary and be grateful, or you can go test that free market you're so confident about. See how far your 3 years of experience gets you without your daddy's company on your resume." I just stared at him. This wasn't a negotiation. This was a threat. "I'll think about it," I said, and left his office. That was on a Tuesday. On Thursday, the bomb dropped. Thursday afternoon, Dad calls an all-hands meeting in the warehouse. Everyone's standing around wondering what's going on. We never do all-hands meetings unless something major is happening. I'm thinking maybe he landed a huge new contract, or we're opening a new location. Nope. Better. So much better. "Folks, got some exciting news." Dad's doing his big speech voice, the one he uses with clients. "As you all know, SCS has been growing rapidly. That growth means we need to expand our leadership team. So I'm thrilled to announce that my son Derek will be joining us as our new Director of Business Development. He's got innovative ideas and connections that'll take us to the next level." I felt my stomach drop. Derek? Director of Business Development? The guy who got fired from handing out free Red Bulls? And then came the part that made my blood boil. Derek's going to be focusing on expanding our market presence and bringing in new business. He'll be working closely with me on strategy and client relations. This is an exciting time for the Sterling family and the Sterling Company. After the meeting, I cornered my dad in his office. What the hell was that? What was what? Derek? Director of Business Development? He doesn't know shit about HVAC or running a business. He doesn't need to know about HVAC. That's what the technical guys are for. He knows people. He's got personality. That's what sales is about. "What's his salary?" I asked, even though I already knew I wasn't going to like the answer. Dad shifted uncomfortably. "That's between me and him." "Bullshit. I'm operations manager. I need to know what our overhead looks like." He sighed. "He's starting at $175,000 base plus commission structure." I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. $175,000? Are you freaking kidding me? He's making almost 3 times what I make. He's in sales. Sales is different. Plus, he's got experience in brand development. Brand development? He handed out energy drinks at college parties. Watch your tone. Derek's going to bring fresh perspective. And frankly, your attitude right now is exactly why you're not ready for more responsibility. That did it. That freaking did it. You know what? You're right. I'm not ready for more responsibility here. I quit. His face went from annoyed to shocked in about half a second. You what? I quit. Effective 2 weeks from today. You want to pay your unqualified son 3 times what you pay the person actually running your company? Go for it. But you're doing it without me. Now hold on. No. I asked for fair compensation. You told me I was lucky to have a job. So I'm going to go be lucky somewhere else. I'll send my formal resignation email within the hour. I walked out, went back to my office, typed up the most professional resignation letter I could manage while my hands were shaking with rage, and hit send. The next few days were weird as hell. Dad tried the whole, let's talk about this routine, but I wasn't interested. Mom called crying, saying I was tearing the family apart. Derek, and this was the best part, actually texted me saying no hard feelings, bro. Like he had nothing to do with this. Like him waltzing in making $175,000 for a made-up position while I was getting peanuts wasn't the entire freaking problem. I didn't respond to any of them, just showed up, did my job, and started updating my resume. Here's where it gets interesting. 3 of my key people approached me separately during that 2-week period. Ryan, my head field supervisor, Lisa, who handled all our major accounts, and Tom, our lead project manager. All 3 had been with the company for years. All 3 were worth their weight in gold, and all 3 had apparently been as fed up with the family favoritism bullshit as I was. Ryan was first, pulled me aside during a site inspection. Heard you're leaving, he said. Yep, time to move on. Where are you going? Don't know yet, putting out feelers. He was quiet for a minute. Then, I've been thinking about leaving too. This Derek thing is bullshit. We all know it. If you land somewhere good, let me know. I might want to come with you. Same conversation happened with Lisa the next day, and Tom the day after that. That's when I realized I had more leverage than I thought. I started reaching out to competitors, put my resume on a few industry job boards. Within 48 hours, I had 3 companies wanting to talk. By the end of week 1, I had 2 solid offers, but the best one came from Apex Climate Systems. They're the biggest HVAC operation in the state, doing about $45 million a year. Their COO called me directly after seeing my resume. We've been watching Sterling's growth the last few years, he said. Word in the industry is that's mostly your doing. I've had a hand in it, I said, being modest. Our current operations manager is retiring in 6 months. We need someone who can step in and hit the ground running. Looking at your track record, you're that person. We'd be willing to offer $95,000 base salary, performance bonuses that could add another $20,000 annually, full benefits including 401k matching, and we can talk about equity options after your first year. I almost dropped my phone. $95,000 base. That was a 53% increase from what my dad was paying me. Add in bonuses, and I'd be making more than my golden child brother with his bullshit title. When do you need an answer? I asked. Take a few days. Think about it. But between you and me, we'd really like to have you. I didn't need a few days. I knew my answer. But I played it cool, told him I'd get back to him by end of week. I spent the next 2 days casually mentioning this offer to Ryan, Lisa, and Tom. Didn't push anything, just let them know where I was potentially landing. All 3 of them asked if Apex was hiring. By the time my 2 weeks at Sterling were up, I'd accepted Apex's offer and put in a good word for Ryan, Lisa, and Tom. All 3 had interviews scheduled. My last day at Sterling was tense. Dad tried one final time to get me to stay. You're making a mistake, he said. This company was going to be yours someday. No, it wasn't, I replied. It was going to be Derek's. You made that pretty clear when you hired him for 3 times my salary to do a job he's not qualified for. He's family. I'm trying to give both my sons opportunities. You gave him an opportunity. You gave me a lesson in knowing my worth. Thanks for that. Genuinely. I walked out, didn't look back, started at Apex 2 weeks later. The job was everything they promised. Better facilities, better equipment, better systems. And I actually had a budget to work with instead of having to beg for every goddamn thing. Within my first month, I'd identified 3 major efficiency improvements we could implement. My boss actually listened to my ideas and gave me the resources to execute them. Best part? Ryan, Lisa, and Tom all got hired within 6 weeks of me starting. Ryan became a senior field operations manager. Lisa took over 2 of their largest accounts. Tom got promoted to regional project director. All 3 were making more money than they'd made at Sterling, with better benefits. Meanwhile, back at SCS, shit was apparently falling apart. I didn't hear about it directly at first, but word travels in this industry. People talk. Technicians know technicians. Project managers grab beers together. Sales reps gossip worse than high school kids. And apparently, Sterling was becoming a shit show of legendary proportions. Derek, shockingly, turned out to be completely freaking useless at his made-up position. Week 1, he spent most of his time getting new business cards printed and setting up his office. Week 2, he wanted to rebrand the company and hired some designer friend to mock up a new logo that looked like it was made in MS Paint. Dad actually approved the $15,000 invoice for this garbage before someone with sense shut it down. Week 3, Derek decided we needed a company Instagram account to connect with younger clients. Posted pictures of himself in a suit standing in front of HVAC equipment with captions like boss vibes and building the future, one system at a time. Got about 47 followers, 40 of which were his friends or bots. His business development mostly consisted of taking long lunches with potential clients that never turned into actual contracts. He'd come back from these lunches talking about all these promising connections and relationships he was building. But I heard from the warehouse guys that his expense reports were just receipts from steakhouses where he was eating alone or with his college buddies. The few leads he did bring in were either too small to be worth pursuing, or he'd made promises about pricing and timelines that were completely unrealistic. He quoted one school district job at 40% below cost because he didn't understand how to calculate installation expenses. Dad had to personally call them and renegotiate, which made us look incompetent. Another time, Derek promised a hospital we could install a complete new HVAC system in 6 weeks. Our actual timeline for that scope of work was 4 months minimum. When I pointed this out in a meeting, Derek said, "We just need to be more aggressive with deadlines." Yeah, because physics and building codes totally care about your aggressive timeline, dumbass. But the absolute worst was when he tried to upsell a longtime client on a system upgrade they didn't need. This was a client we'd been working with for 15 years. They trusted us. Derek straight up lied about their current system failing to try to make a sale. The facility manager called my dad directly to complain. We almost lost a $200,000 annual maintenance contract because Derek thought he was playing used car salesman. He spent most of his time posting on LinkedIn about disrupting the HVAC industry with thought leadership posts he clearly didn't write himself. 5 ways climate control is revolutionizing modern business. Why your HVAC system is actually your best employee. Cringe shit that got like 12 likes from other people's moms. Without me handling operations, my dad had to step back in, but he hadn't run day-to-day operations in 3 years. He didn't know the new systems I'd implemented, didn't understand the workflows I'd optimized, didn't know which vendors we were using or why, kept reverting to old methods that hadn't worked, which is exactly why I'd changed them in the first place. I'd set up this whole digital dispatch system where techs got assignments on tablets with all the job history, parts needed, customer notes. Dad went back to calling guys on the phone and having them write shit down on clipboards. Response times immediately doubled. I'd negotiated bulk pricing agreements with our main suppliers. Dad apparently let some of those lapse and went back to ordering shit at retail prices because we'd always worked with them before. Never mind that I'd gotten us 35% discounts by committing to volume orders. The preventive maintenance scheduling system I'd built, Dad didn't understand how it worked, so they just stopped using it. Went back to reactive service calls only. Lost thousands in predictable monthly revenue. Without Ryan, their field operations went to hell. Response times doubled. They started missing deadlines. Customer complaints shot up because nobody was coordinating the techs properly. Guys were showing up to jobs without the right parts. Jobs were getting scheduled without checking if the crew had the expertise needed. I heard one story about a commercial installation that took 3 weeks longer than quoted because nobody thought to verify that the team they sent actually knew how to install that particular system type. They had to bring in an outside contractor to finish it, ate the entire profit margin plus extra, and the client was pissed. Without Lisa managing major accounts, they started losing contracts. She'd spent years building relationships with facility managers and purchasing directors at our top accounts. She knew their buildings, their equipment, their budgets, their priorities. She'd remember that the maintenance supervisor at St. Mary's Hospital liked his coffee black and hated phone calls before 9 a.m. That the school district procurement officer needed everything submitted 30 days before board meetings. That the county facilities director was a huge Broncos fan, and you better not schedule work during game days. Whoever they replaced her with didn't have those relationships, didn't have that knowledge, started treating these long-term clients like they were brand new accounts, sent generic proposals instead of customized solutions. The school district actually called Lisa at Apex to ask what was going on with Sterling. That's how bad it got. Without Tom running project management, their installation jobs started running over budget and behind schedule. Tom had been the guy who could juggle 12 projects simultaneously and somehow keep them all on track. He knew how to sequence work to maximize efficiency, knew which contractors were reliable and which ones needed constant supervision, knew how to spot problems before they became expensive disasters. The new project management team didn't have that experience. Jobs that should have taken 4 weeks were taking 7. Budgets that should have had 25% margins were barely breaking even or running at a loss. Clients were calling to complain about delays, and Dad didn't have good answers because he didn't actually know what was happening on the sites. I heard through the grapevine that my dad tried to hire replacements, but Sterling's reputation in the industry was taking a serious beating. Good people didn't want to work there when they kept hearing stories about the nepotistic disaster that was Derek's hire and the mass exodus of experienced staff. The word was out. Sterling wasn't a professional operation anymore. It was a family drama playing out with a business license. 3 months after I left, I ran into one of Sterling's warehouse guys at a supply distributor. Nice kid, always worked hard. "How's it going over there?" I asked. He looked around like he was worried someone might hear. "Dude, it's bad. We lost the hospital contracts. 2 of the school district buildings dropped us. Everybody's working crazy overtime trying to keep up, and your dad's losing his shit. Derek doesn't do anything except walk around acting important. Half the guys are looking for new jobs." "Sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it for the employees, not for my dad. "Don't be sorry, man. Everybody knows they did you dirty. You deserved better." 2 weeks after that conversation, my phone rang. Blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but figured what the hell. "Hello? It's your father." "Oh, this should be good. What can I do for you, Dad?" "We need to talk. About you coming back." I actually pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at it, like maybe I'd heard wrong. "You want me to come back? Things have been challenging since you left. We need someone with your experience to stabilize things." "And what about Derek? Still director of business development, making $175,000? Silence. "He's transitioning to a different role." Translation. "We realized we freaked up, but don't want to admit it outright. Here's my counteroffer," I said. "No. Don't be childish about this." "I'm not being childish. I'm being professional. You had a chance to treat me fairly. You chose to treat me like shit while handing my underqualified brother a golden parachute. That showed me exactly where I stand with you. I've moved on. You should too. I'm offering you operations director. $90,000 salary. I'm already making $95,000 base plus bonuses at Apex. Try again. Fine. $100,000. And we'll discuss equity." "You'll discuss it? That's not an offer. That's a maybe. Plus, even if you gave me $100,000, you're asking me to come back to fix all the problems you created by not listening to me in the first place. Why would I do that? Because it's family business. Because you'd be an owner someday. You know what? I'm done with this conversation. Good luck, Dad." I hung up. He called back 3 more times that day, left increasingly desperate voicemails. I didn't respond to any of them. Then Mom started calling. Then Derek, of all people, sent this long text about how the family needs me and how we're all struggling, and could I please just talk to Dad? Nope. Blocked, blocked, and blocked. 2 more months passed. I heard through multiple sources that Sterling was circling the drain. They'd lost about 40% of their contracts. Revenue was down to around $7 million, lower than when I'd started working there. They'd had to lay off about 1/3 of their workforce. Word was that Dad had taken out a massive loan to try to keep things afloat, and now they couldn't make the payments. Then I got a call from a business attorney I'd never met. Said he was representing S in potential bankruptcy proceedings, and my father had given him permission to reach out to me about possibly consulting to help restructure the company. "How bad is it?" I asked. "Without significant operational improvements and new contract revenue within the next 90 days, they'll have to file Chapter 11. And you think I can fix that?" Your name came up repeatedly when we interviewed employees about what changed. Before and after your departure. I let that sink in. 3 years of my work systematically dismantled in 6 months because my dad was too stubborn and too busy playing favorites to recognize what he had. "I'm going to be honest with you," I told the attorney. "I have zero interest in saving that company. None. My father had the chance to value my contributions when I was there. He chose not to. That's on him. I understand, but I'm obligated to ask, is there any circumstance under which you'd consider helping?" I thought about it. Thought about all those employees who didn't deserve to lose their jobs because of my dad's ego. Thought about the clients who'd get screwed if Sterling went under mid-contract. Thought about the satisfaction of making my dad admit he was wrong. "Here's the only scenario I'd consider," I said. "Full ownership transfer to me. He signs over 100% equity in the company. He exits completely. No advisory role, no board seat, nothing. I bring in a management team I trust, restructure however I see fit, and he has zero input. Those are my terms. That's a significant ask. That's my only offer. And honestly, he should take it. Because without me, that company is dead anyway. With me, at least the employees keep their jobs and the clients get served. He walks away with nothing either way. This way, at least something survives that has his name on it. I'll relay that to my client. 2 days later, Dad called me from his attorney's office. On speaker, "These terms are outrageous," he started. "Then don't accept them. File bankruptcy, lose everything, but don't waste my time pretending you have leverage here. I built this company. I'm not just handing it over. You didn't build it. You founded it. I built it. The $14 million version that existed when I left, that was me. The $7 million disaster it is now, that's you and Derek. So yeah, you are handing it over. Or you're shutting it down. Your choice." His attorney jumped in. "Perhaps we could discuss a partnership structure where no partnerships, full transfer or nothing. Silence on the line." I could practically hear my dad's teeth grinding. "You're screwing your own father," he finally said. "No, I'm offering to save something you destroyed. You're just pissed that saving it means admitting you were wrong about everything. About me, about Derek, about what this company needed. And you know what the really funny part is? If you'd just given me a fair raise and treated me with basic respect, none of this would be happening. You'd still have your company. I'd still be running it. We'd still be growing. Instead, your ego killed your business. I'm just offering it a transplant." More silence. "I need time to think about this." "You have 48 hours. After that, my offer expires and you can figure it out yourself." "Clock's ticking, Dad." I hung up. Those 48 hours felt long. Part of me expected him to reject it out of pride. Part of me didn't even know if I wanted him to accept. Did I really want to go back to Sterling? Even if I owned it? But there was something poetic about it. The company he'd refused to treat me fairly at. Signing it over because his pride destroyed it. The golden child position he'd created getting eliminated. Me coming back not as the undervalued employee, but as the owner. Yeah, I wanted that. "Hour 47, his attorney called. "He's accepting your terms. We'll start drawing up the paperwork." He's actually going through with it? He doesn't have a choice. It's this or liquidation. And between you and me, I think losing the company to his son is slightly less humiliating than losing it to creditors. The paperwork took 3 weeks. Ownership transfer, loan assumption, restructuring agreements. I brought in my own attorney to make sure every detail was ironclad. No loopholes, no takesy-backsies. The day we signed everything, my dad looked like he'd aged 10 years. Sat across from me at the attorney's conference table, barely making eye contact. "You're making a mistake," he said as he signed the final page. "This company needs family at the helm." "It has family at the helm," I replied. "Me, just not the family member you wanted?" Derek wasn't even at the signing. I'd made it clear he was terminated effective immediately as part of the deal. Heard later he threw a massive fit, threatened to sue me, threatened to sue Dad. Dad apparently told him to grow up and get a real job. Almost felt bad for him. Almost. As my dad stood to leave, he tried one last manipulation. "Your mother's devastated, you know. This is killing her. Then she should have spoken up when you were treating me like garbage. Actions have consequences." Turns out that applies to parents, too. He left without another word. I officially took over SCS on a Monday. Spent the first week doing damage assessment. It was worse than I thought. Not just lost contracts and revenue. The entire company culture had turned toxic. Morale was in the toilet. People were afraid to make decisions. Everything was running on outdated systems because nobody had authority to implement changes. The warehouse was a mess. Inventory system had degraded back to paper clipboards. Found about $80,000 worth of parts that had expired or been sitting so long they were obsolete. The shop was disorganized. Tools missing, work bays cluttered, safety protocols being ignored. Talked to the techs who'd stayed. Most were looking for other jobs. The good ones felt disrespected and overworked. The mediocre ones were coasting because there was no accountability. Customer service was answering calls at like 60% rate. The rest went to voicemail that sometimes got checked. Our response time for service requests had gone from 4 hours to 2 days. 2 days for commercial HVAC emergencies. The financials were even worse than I expected. Not only was revenue down to $7 million, but profit margins had collapsed. Jobs that should have been profitable were barely breaking even because of poor estimating and worse execution. Overhead costs had actually increased despite lower revenue because Dad had been throwing money at problems instead of fixing root causes. First move, Hired Ryan, Lisa, and Tom away from Apex. Took some negotiating. They were happy there, and I had to match their current salaries plus some. Ryan wanted $120,000. Lisa wanted $115,000. Tom wanted $125,000, plus equity stakes. I gave each of them 5% ownership immediately with the option to vest into more based on performance. All three agreed to come back as partners with skin in the game. Second move, brought in an HR consultant to rebuild the culture. Exit interviews with people who'd left. Anonymous surveys with people who stayed. The feedback was brutal, but useful. Management doesn't communicate. Nobody knows what the plan is. Derek was a joke. We miss the old leadership. Company feels rudderless. Created actual job descriptions for every position. Proper compensation structures tied to industry standards. Clear advancement paths so people knew how to move up. Performance review processes. Training programs. No more nepotism, no more favoritism. Just merit-based everything. If you did good work, you got recognized and paid accordingly. If you didn't, you got coached or counseled out. Rebuilt the operation systems I'd originally implemented. Brought back the digital dispatch. Renegotiated vendor contracts. Reinstated the preventive maintenance program. Fixed the inventory management. Set up proper project management protocols. Everything that had been working before I left, brought it all back, plus improvements I'd learned at Apex. Third move, reached out personally to every client we'd lost or was thinking about leaving. This wasn't delegatable. I called facility managers, purchasing directors, maintenance supervisors, explained the ownership change, took responsibility for failures they'd experienced, introduced the new management team, and outlined specifically how we were going to fix problems. Some were skeptical, rightfully so. We'd screwed up their buildings, missed deadlines, cost them money. But enough were willing to give us another shot, especially the ones who remembered working with me before. The hospital that had dropped us got them back with a 6-month probationary contract. The school district let us bid on their next project. It took 6 months of grinding before we stabilized. Every day was putting out fires and rebuilding trust. But revenue started climbing back up. Client retention improved. We rehired some of the laid-off employees who'd been good. Started winning new contracts. Year 1 under my ownership, we hit $12 million revenue. Not back to the $14 million peak yet, but climbing. Year 2, we hit $16 million. Year 3, last year, we cracked $20 million. SCS is now worth more than it's ever been. We've got 95 employees, all of them paid fairly. Ryan, Lisa, Tom, and I each own 25% of the company. We make decisions together. Everybody gets profit sharing. Culture is solid. And my dad? Last I heard, he and mom downsized to a smaller house. Derek's working sales at a car dealership in another state, bouncing from job to job like always. None of them have reached out since the ownership transfer went through. I haven't reached out to them either. Do I feel bad about how it went down? Sometimes, yeah. Would have been nice to have a family that actually valued me. Would have been nice if Dad could have just paid me fairly and treated me with respect from the start. But mostly, I feel free. Free from the constant disrespect, the favoritism, the being taken for granted. Free from waiting for approval that was never coming. Free from watching my work get credited to someone else or dismissed as lucky. Some people say I was too harsh. That family should forgive. That I should have worked something out where Dad kept partial ownership. Freak that. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting people keep hurting you. Family doesn't mean accepting disrespect. And keeping someone involved who destroyed what you built isn't noble. It's stupid. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. I won millions in the lottery and decided not to tell anyone. I asked my family for help as a test. Most of them suddenly couldn't lend a dime, but had no problem posting vacation photos. Only one person actually lent me a hand. Buckle up, Reddit. This is going to be a long one, but I promise it's worth the read. 3 years ago, my life changed forever, but not in the way you'd expect. Yeah, I won the lottery, but the real story is what happened next when I discovered who my family really was. Some backstory first, because context matters here. I, 36 male, live in Columbus, Ohio, and for most of my life, I was what you might call the extra sibling. Not the golden child, not the black sheep, just the forgettable middle kid that nobody really paid attention to. You know the type. Decent grades, stayed out of trouble, but never quite good enough to earn the spotlight. I worked as a diesel mechanic for a freight company, pulling 12-hour shifts in freezing garages, fixing big rigs. My supervisor was one of those old school guys who thought screaming at employees was effective management. The pay was just enough to keep a small roof over my head in a duplex that had seen better days sometime around the Clinton administration. Now, my family situation was complicated. Let me introduce you to the cast of characters that made my childhood and young adulthood so delightful. My older brother Derek is 39 and has always been the golden boy. Our parents helped him buy a construction business right after college. Not a loan, mind you, but straight up gift money for equipment, down payments, the works. This guy drives brand new trucks every couple of years, constantly posts those cringy, hustle and grind motivational quotes on Facebook, and genuinely believes he's a self-made success story. The cognitive dissonance is stunning. He acts like he built his empire from nothing when the foundation was literally paved with our parents' cash. Derek's the type who name drops the cost of everything he owns in casual conversation. Yeah, just picked up this $80,000 truck, but you know how it is when business is booming. No, Derek, I don't know how it is, because some of us actually had to build our lives without a trust fund. Then there's my younger brother Kyle, who's 31 and still living in our parents' basement. He's perpetually between opportunities and always working on the next big thing, which translates to playing Call of Duty until 3 a.m. while mom brings him sandwiches cut into triangles, like he's still 7 years old. Kyle has this way of making unemployment sound like entrepreneurship. Every few months, he's got some revolutionary app idea or cryptocurrency scheme that's going to make him millions. Spoiler alert, none of them ever pan out. My sister Sarah is 33, a single mom working part-time at a hair salon. She's raising her 8-year-old daughter Emma, basically on her own, after her ex decided fatherhood wasn't for him and moved to Phoenix. Sarah struggles to make rent every month, but she never complains. She's the type who will post pictures of Emma's school projects on Facebook with captions like, "So proud of my little artist," while wearing the same 3 outfits on rotation because she spends every spare dollar on her kid. And then there's me, the invisible one. When I lost my apartment at 28 because the landlord sold the building and didn't renew any leases, guess who didn't get offered a couch to crash on? That's right, the family that had a whole finished basement going unused except for Kyle's gaming setup. Instead, I spent 6 weeks sleeping in my truck in various parking lots around town, showering at the 24-hour gym, and trying to maintain some dignity while my life fell apart. The breaking point came a year later, when my truck's transmission died. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it was an existential crisis. No truck meant no way to get to work, and no work meant no way to fix the truck. I was looking at a $3,200 repair bill with about $180 in my checking account. So I swallowed my pride and called Derek, explained the situation, asked for a loan, not a handout, a loan with interest and a payment plan. I even offered to work extra hours at his company to pay it back. Derek listened to my whole sob story, then started laughing. Not a chuckle, but full-blown laughter like I just told him the funniest joke he'd ever heard. "Maybe," he said between laughs, "it's time you accept that you're just not cut out for much. Some people are built for success, and others, well, others are built for other things." That sentence lodged itself in my brain like a splinter. For years afterward, every time something went wrong, every time I struggled, I could hear Derek's voice telling me I wasn't cut out for much. I ended up taking a payday loan at 400% interest to fix the truck. Spent the next 8 months paying it off, eating ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches to make ends meet. Fast forward to 3 years ago. It was a Friday night in February, and I'd just finished one of those shifts that makes you question your life choices. 12 hours of crawling under frozen trucks, getting hydraulic fluid in my hair, and listening to my supervisor blame me for problems that existed long before I clocked in. I stopped at a gas station on the way home, partly for gas and partly because the heater in my truck was acting up and I needed a few minutes in a warm building. The place was nearly empty, just me, the cashier, and some trucker grabbing energy drinks for an overnight haul. I had exactly $47 in my wallet, which had to last until the next paycheck. Gas took $35, leaving me with $12 for whatever food I could scrounge up for the weekend. But there, sitting behind the counter, was a display of scratch-off tickets. Now, I'm not usually a gambling man. I'd bought maybe 5 lottery tickets in my entire life, and they were all worthless. But something about that night, maybe it was the exhaustion, maybe it was Derek's voice still echoing in my head, maybe it was just the cosmic joke of being 33 and having $12 to my name, made me pull out a $10 bill. "Give me one of those $10 tickets," I told the cashier, pointing to a game called Millionaire's Club. He handed me the ticket and a penny to scratch with. I usually would have waited until I got home, but the truck was cold and the store was warm, so I scratched it right there at the counter. First box, $500,000. Okay, that's the grand prize amount. Nothing unusual there. Second box, $500,000. Weird coincidence, but still. Third box, $500,000. My heart started doing something irregular in my chest. I checked the rules on the back of the ticket, read them twice, then 3 times. 3 matching amounts wins that amount. I had just won $500,000. But wait, it gets better. Because when I looked more carefully at the ticket, I realized I was reading it wrong. This wasn't a $500,000 prize. This was a $20 million prize, which after taxes came out to $13.4 million. I stood there in that gas station for probably 5 minutes, staring at the ticket, waiting for the number to change or for someone to tell me it was a mistake. The cashier asked if I was okay. The trucker asked if I needed to sit down. I mumbled something about needing air and stumbled outside to my truck. Sitting in the parking lot with the engine running, I stared at that ticket until my eyes hurt. I took pictures of it with my phone from every angle. I Googled the Lottery Commission's phone number and called their 24-hour validation line, punching in the serial number with shaking fingers. "Congratulations," the automated voice said. "This appears to be a winning ticket. Please contact our office during business hours to begin the claim process." I drove home in complete silence, not even turning on the radio. In my apartment, I put the ticket in a Ziploc bag, then put that bag inside another Ziploc bag, then put both bags in a fireproof safe I'd bought years earlier for important documents. Then I sat on my couch and stared at the wall until sunrise. The lottery office opened at 8 a.m. on Monday. I was there at 7:45, first in line, wearing my cleanest jeans and a button-down shirt I'd bought for a job interview 2 years earlier. The process was surprisingly straightforward, but took the entire week. Lawyers, financial advisors, tax specialists. Suddenly, I had a whole team of professionals whose job was to make sure I didn't blow through $13.4 million like one of those cautionary tales you see on reality TV. My financial advisor was this no-nonsense woman who'd been managing lottery winners for 15 years. First thing she told me, the money won't change who you are, but it will reveal who everyone else is. We set up a trust, diversified the investments, created multiple income streams. Conservative estimates put my annual income at around $600,000 without touching the principal. Even if I lived lavishly, the money would last forever. But here's the thing. I didn't want to live lavishly. Not yet anyway. I kept going to work that whole week, kept living in my crappy duplex, kept driving my beat-up Silverado. The only difference was that I'd catch myself smiling at random moments, like when my supervisor would scream at me about productivity quotas, or when I'd see Derek's latest Facebook post about his empire, because I had a plan forming in my head, a plan that would answer a question that had been eating at me for years. If I really needed help, if my life depended on it, would my family be there for me? I was about to find out. 2 weeks after claiming the lottery, I started my little experiment. I called my parents first, figuring I'd start with the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. "Dad," I said when he answered, "I need to talk to you about something serious." I told them my shop had been cutting hours for months, and they'd finally laid me off. I said my truck's transmission was acting up again, and this time the repair would cost more than the vehicle was worth. I mentioned that my landlord was raising rent, and I couldn't afford the increase on unemployment benefits. My dad listened to the whole story, then launched into a lecture about tough times building character and how real men find a way to make things work. My mom chimed in with helpful suggestions like, "Have you tried praying about it?" and "Everything happens for a reason." When I directly asked if they could help me get back on my feet, maybe let me stay in Kyle's old room for a few weeks while I job hunted, the conversation got uncomfortable fast. "Son," Dad said, "your mother and I are on a fixed income. We can't be supporting grown children who should be supporting themselves." This from the man who'd written Derek a $75,000 check for business equipment just 3 years earlier. "We'll pray for you," Mom added, "but you need to learn to handle your own problems." I thanked them for their time and hung up. 1 down, 3 to go. Derek was next. I called him the following evening, right around dinner time when I knew he'd be home. "Bro," I said, putting on my best desperate voice, "I'm in real trouble here." I gave him the same story. Lost job, broken truck, eviction looming. I asked if maybe I could work for his company, just temporarily, while I got back on my feet. Derek was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You know what? I might have something for you." My heart jumped. Maybe I'd misjudged him. Maybe blood really was thicker than water. I need someone to clean the office and workshop after hours, he continued. It's $8 an hour, maybe 15 hours a week, just so you're not sitting around feeling sorry for yourself. $8 an hour. The federal minimum wage was $7.25, so technically he was being generous with that extra 75 cents. Derek, I said. I was making $22 an hour at the shop. I've got 15 years of mechanical experience. Don't you have any actual mechanic work? Look, he said, and I could hear that condescending tone creeping in. Beggars can't be choosers. Take the janitor job or don't, but stop expecting handouts just because we're related. Handouts. Like asking for work was the same as asking for charity. I told him I'd think about it and hung up. Kyle's response was exactly what I expected. Dang, bro, that really sucks. I'd help if I could, but you know how it is. Yeah, Kyle, I know exactly how it is. You're 31 years old and your biggest expense is Xbox Live. But Sarah was different. I called her last, partly because I was hoping I wouldn't need to drag her into this test, and partly because I already knew she'd try to help even though she couldn't afford to. Oh my God, she said when I finished explaining my fake crisis. Why didn't you call me first? Before I could answer, she was already making plans. Could I come over that night? Did I need food? Did I have warm clothes? I don't have much, she said, but I've got $60 in my emergency fund, and you can have it. And my couch is always open for as long as you need. $60. This from someone who was choosing between groceries and gas money every week. Sarah, I can't take your emergency money. Yes, you can, she interrupted. That's what family does. We take care of each other. She drove over that same night with the cash, a bag of groceries, and a container of leftover spaghetti and meatballs. She made up my couch with her own sheets and pillows, gave me a spare key to her place, and told me not to worry about anything except getting back on my feet. That $60 was worth more to me than all $13 million in the bank. While my family thought I was struggling to find work, I was actually building something I dreamed about for years. Using a shell company, I bought a small warehouse on the outskirts of town. Nothing fancy, just 8,000 square feet of concrete floors and high ceilings. I converted it into a custom truck and off-road vehicle shop. Not just repairs, but full custom builds. Lift kits, performance engines, custom paint jobs, the works. It was everything I'd wanted to do, but never had the capital to attempt. My first two employees were Dave and Manny, guys I'd worked with at the freight company. These were the co-workers who'd given me rides when my truck was in the shop, who'd covered my lunch when I was broke, who'd actually treated me like a human being instead of a nuisance. When I offered them jobs at double their previous salary plus full health benefits, Dave literally started crying. Manny asked if I was serious 3 times before he'd even look at the contract. How did you get the money for all this? Dave asked, gesturing around the shop. I got lucky, I told him, which was technically true. Setting up the business took 6 months of careful planning. Business licenses, insurance, equipment, inventory. I had to learn more about entrepreneurship in 6 months than Derek had learned in his entire pampered life. The best part was how invisible I remained. Everyone knew the new shop existed, but nobody connected it to me. I was just some guy who disappeared after getting laid off, presumably moved to another city to find work. Meanwhile, I kept playing the struggling unemployed brother when I had to interact with family. I'd show up to Sarah's place every few days, always looking slightly defeated, always grateful for whatever help she offered. She never once made me feel like a burden. During one of these visits, she mentioned that Derek's business was starting to have problems. Customer complaints were increasing, projects were running over budget, and he'd had to let 2 guys go the previous month. He's stressed all the time now, she said. The other day he snapped at Emma just for being a kid. I told him if he ever talks to my daughter that way again, family or not, we're done. This was interesting information. Very interesting. About 8 months into my unemployment, I did something that felt better than winning the lottery itself. I bought Sarah a house. Not a mansion, nothing that would raise questions, just a modest 3-bedroom brick house in a safe neighborhood with good schools. It had a fenced backyard where Emma could play, a 2-car garage, and most importantly, it was in a school district that would give Emma opportunities Sarah had never dreamed of. I had my financial advisor structure it through a dummy corporation, then had my lawyer approach Sarah with a story about being selected for a single mother housing assistance program that covered the full purchase price. Sarah was suspicious at first. She's not naive, and free houses don't just fall from the sky. But when my lawyer showed her all the official-looking paperwork and explained that she'd been recommended by someone who wished to remain anonymous, she broke down crying in his office. The day she and Emma moved in, I happened to drive by while they were carrying boxes. Sarah saw me and ran over to the car, practically bouncing with excitement. "Can you believe this?" she said, gesturing at the house. "Emma's going to have her own room with a window that looks out on the backyard. And there's a bathtub, not just a shower. I haven't had a bathtub in 5 years." Watching her happiness, knowing I was responsible for it, was worth more than any revenge I was planning. By the 1-year mark, Derek's construction business was in serious trouble. Social media posts about success and grinding had stopped entirely. The shiny new truck had been replaced by a 3-year-old model. Word was getting around town that his company was missing deadlines and going over budget on every job. That's when he called me. "Hey, little brother," he said, using a tone I hadn't heard from him in years. The fake friendly voice he used when he wanted something. "I heard you might still be looking for work." I'd been unemployed for almost a year at this point, living off what family assumed were unemployment benefits and odd jobs. "I'm listening," I said. "My business is, well, let's call it in a growth phase. Lots of opportunities, but I need someone I can trust to help me take things to the next level. I was thinking maybe we could be partners." Partners. That was rich. "What kind of partnership?" I asked. "Well, I'd still be the primary owner, obviously, since it's my company and my reputation on the line. But I could see giving you maybe a 5% stake in exchange for a significant investment." "How significant?" $400,000 should do it. It's a bargain, really, considering what the company's worth. $400,000. From someone he thought was unemployed and desperate. "Derek," I said slowly, "where exactly do you think I'd get $400,000? "I don't know, man. Bank loan, investor, whatever. You're a smart guy when you apply yourself. Figure it out." The audacity was breathtaking. And what would I get for this investment, besides 5% ownership? Experience mainly. Learning how to run a real business from someone who's actually successful. Think of it as paying for an education. I told him I'd think about it and call him back. Instead, I spent the next week having Derek's business thoroughly investigated. Financial records, client satisfaction surveys, outstanding debts, pending legal issues. I wanted to know everything. The results were worse than I'd expected. Derek owed money to suppliers, had 3 different clients threatening lawsuits, and was about 6 weeks away from bankruptcy. His $400,000 investment opportunity was actually a desperate attempt to stay afloat. But here's the thing about desperate people. They make stupid decisions. I called Derek back and told him I'd found an investor willing to put up the money. We agreed to meet at a steakhouse downtown to discuss terms. Derek showed up to dinner in a leased BMW that probably cost more per month than most people's rent. He ordered the most expensive steak on the menu and spent the first 20 minutes telling me about his latest vacation plans and some new equipment he was thinking about buying. I let him talk, ordered a modest meal, and waited for him to get around to business. "So," he finally said, cutting into his $60 ribeye, "tell me about this investor of yours." "He's someone I've been talking to," I said. "Very interested in construction, has cash available, and is looking for the right opportunity." "What's his background?" "Various businesses. He likes to stay low profile." Derek nodded like this made perfect sense. "Smart. I'm the same way. So what are we talking about here?" "The full 400. He'd prefer to buy the company outright," I said. "Sees more potential in ownership than partnership." Derek's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Buy it outright? This company's worth millions." "How much exactly?" "At least 2 million, maybe 3. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and slid it across the table. Derek's expression went from confidence to confusion to shock as he stared at the screen showing a balance of $8.2 million. "I had it appraised," I said quietly. "Professional evaluation, 3 different firms. They all came back with the same number, $85,000. Derek's face went through several color changes. That's impossible. I've put years of work into this company. Years of work that led to customer complaints, lawsuits, and bankruptcy. "Derek, you're 6 weeks away from losing everything." He was quiet for a long moment, still staring at my phone. How did you... "Does it matter? Here's what I'm offering. $85,000, cash, for 100% ownership. You can stay on as a project manager with a competitive salary." "Project manager? It's my company. It was your company. Now it's just debt and bad reputation. Take the deal, Derek, because it's the only one you're getting." Derek signed the papers 3 days later. He didn't have a choice. It was either sell to me or declare bankruptcy and lose everything anyway. The transition was swift and comprehensive. I kept the good employees and let go of the dead weight. I settled the outstanding debts and lawsuits. Most importantly, I restructured everything to actually serve customers instead of just enriching the owner. Derek's first day as my employee was educational for both of us. He showed up at his usual time, 10 a.m. because owners don't punch clocks, and headed straight for his old corner office. I intercepted him in the hallway. "Morning, Derek. Your workspace is over here." I led him to a desk in the main room, right in the middle of everything. "Where's my office?" I converted it into a conference room. Much better use of space. His company Audi was gone, replaced by a basic work truck like everyone else drove. His expense account was canceled. His special parking spot became visitor parking. But the real change was his salary, from $120,000 a year down to $55,000. The same as the other project managers, which was actually generous considering his recent performance. "This is temporary, right?" he asked after I explained his new compensation package. "Until you see how valuable I am to operations." "Derek," I said, "your value to operations will determine everything about your employment here. Perform well, and you'll be treated well. Underperform, and you'll be replaced." For the first time in our adult lives, Derek had to actually work for his money. While Derek was adjusting to life as a regular employee, I was making some other changes. Sarah had always been good with numbers and organization, skills that were wasted cutting hair for tips and doing part-time bookkeeping for small businesses. I offered her the position of operations director at a salary that doubled what she'd been making at the salon. She almost didn't believe me at first. "I don't have experience running construction projects," she said. "You have experience managing a household on no budget, raising a child alone, and keeping multiple part-time jobs organized. Trust me, you're overqualified." Sarah turned out to be exactly what the company needed. She instituted systems for tracking projects, improved communication with clients, and somehow managed to keep Derek from screwing up the jobs he was assigned to. Watching Derek take orders from our little sister was perhaps the most satisfying part of my revenge. For 33 years, he'd treated Sarah like she was invisible, just another family member who didn't matter. Now she was his boss, and she was better at the job than he'd ever been. Sarah never abused her authority, but she didn't coddle him either. When Derek tried to cut corners on a project, Sarah shut it down. When he showed up late, she documented it. When he complained about his new circumstances, she reminded him that having a job was better than unemployment. About 6 months into the new arrangement, Kyle started sniffing around for opportunities. He'd heard through the family grapevine that I was doing better and had even started some kind of business. He showed up at the shop one morning with a resume printed on copy paper and what I can only describe as audacious confidence. "Thought you might need some extra hands," he said, looking around at the equipment and vehicles. "I've got some ideas for improving efficiency." Kyle's resume was a work of creative fiction. He'd listed entrepreneurial ventures as his primary experience and described his basement gaming setup as remote digital marketing operations. "What exactly do you think you could contribute here?" I asked. "Well, I've been researching the industry, and I think you're missing some key opportunities in the digital space. Social media marketing, online customer acquisition, that sort of thing." This from someone who's never held a job for more than 3 months. "Kyle," I said, "this is a construction and custom vehicle business. Our clients care about quality work, not hashtags." "That's exactly the kind of thinking that keeps small businesses small," he replied, apparently unaware that he was lecturing someone whose small business was already more successful than anything he'd ever attempted. I told him we were fully staffed and didn't need additional help. He left disappointed but not defeated. Kyle's optimism is impervious to reality. By month 8, Derek was struggling. The work was harder than he remembered, the hours were longer than he was used to, and the lack of special treatment was wearing on him. It all came to a head during a client meeting. Derek had promised a client we could complete their project in half the time it would actually take, apparently forgetting that he no longer had the authority to make such commitments. When the client called to confirm the timeline, Sarah had to explain that Derek had misstated our capabilities, and the realistic completion date was twice what he'd promised. The client was not happy. They came to the shop for a face-to-face meeting, and let's just say they expressed their displeasure loudly and in detail. Derek tried to deflect blame onto miscommunication and new management procedures, but it was clear to everyone present that he'd simply lied to try to secure the contract. After the client left, I called Derek into my office. "That was unacceptable," I said. "Look, sometimes you have to tell clients what they want to hear to get the job. Then you figure out how to make it work." "No, Derek. Sometimes you have to tell clients the truth so they can make informed decisions. What you did was dishonest and unprofessional. Since when do you lecture me about business? 6 months ago you were unemployed and desperate." There it was. The real Derek, the one who'd been hiding behind forced politeness since I'd bought his company. "And now I own a successful business while you're an employee who just cost us a client. Funny how things change." Derek's face went red. This is my company. I built this from nothing. You built this into nothing. I'm rebuilding it into something. And if you can't accept that, you're welcome to find employment elsewhere. You can't fire me. I'm your brother. I can fire anyone who doesn't do their job properly. Being my brother just means I gave you more chances than I'd give anyone else. Derek stormed out of my office and didn't come back for 3 days. When Derek finally returned, he was different. The pretense of cooperation was gone, replaced by barely concealed resentment and defiance. He started showing up late regularly. His work quality declined. He began making snide comments to other employees about family businesses and lucky breaks. Meanwhile, my parents had caught wind of the situation and were not pleased. They called me on a Tuesday evening, both on speakerphone for maximum impact. "What's this we hear about you humiliating your brother?" Mom asked. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Derek says you bought his company just to torture him," Dad added. "Says you're making him work like a common laborer. Derek is working as a project manager, same as the other project managers. If he has complaints about his treatment, he can address them through proper channels." "This is ridiculous," Mom said. "Families should support each other, not tear each other down." The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. "You're absolutely right, Mom. Families should support each other." Where was that support when I was sleeping in my truck? Where was it when I needed help with basic transportation to keep working? That was different. No, it wasn't. The only difference is that now I have the power to help or not help, and I'm choosing to base that decision on how I was treated when I had nothing. Dad's voice got stern. "You're being petty and vindictive. I'm being consistent. Derek is still employed, still earning a living wage, still has opportunities to prove himself. That's more support than I ever received from this family." The conversation ended badly, with my parents insisting I was destroying the family and me pointing out that the family had already been destroyed by years of favoritism and neglect. Derek lasted another month before he reached his breaking point. He came into my office on a Friday afternoon with an ultimatum. "I want my old role back," he announced. "Full authority, executive salary, company car. This experiment has gone on long enough." I leaned back in my chair and studied him. He looked tired, defeated, but still somehow entitled. "What experiment? This whole thing where you pretend to be the boss. We both know I'm the one with the experience and connections. Give me back control, and I'll consider letting you stay on as a partner." The audacity was stunning. Even in defeat, Derek couldn't imagine a world where he wasn't the center of everything. "Derek," I said slowly, "let me make sure I understand. You want me to give you back the company I bought from you, restore the salary and benefits that were bankrupting the business, and accept a junior role in the company I've spent 8 months rebuilding?" When you put it like that, it sounds unreasonable, but it doesn't just sound unreasonable, Derek. It is unreasonable. Here's what I'm prepared to offer. You can continue working here as a project manager, following the same rules as everyone else, or you can find employment elsewhere. Those are your options. Derek's face went through a range of emotions: anger, disbelief, desperation, and finally resignation. "You really think you're better than me now, don't you?" "I think I'm more successful than you now. Whether that makes me better is a different question." "This isn't over," he said, heading for the door. "Actually, Derek, it is. And if you decide to leave, don't expect a reference letter." Derek walked out that day and never came back. He didn't even clean out his desk, just disappeared like a bad employee who knows he's about to be fired. I heard through the family grapevine that he'd found work at a rival construction company, but as a basic site supervisor, making about half what I'd been paying him. His girlfriend, the one who'd been attracted to his success, apparently decided that dating a middle management employee wasn't as appealing as dating a business owner. Within 2 months, Derek had moved into a smaller apartment in a less desirable part of town. His social media presence, once filled with humble brags and luxury purchases, went silent entirely. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no regret, just the quiet contentment of a problem that had solved itself. 6 months later, my parents attempted one final intervention. They invited me to Sunday dinner, the first invitation I'd received in over 2 years, and sat me down for what they probably thought would be a come-to-Jesus conversation. "Derek's struggling," Mom said. "His health is suffering from the stress. He's lost weight, looks tired all the time," Dad added. "This feud needs to end." "There's no feud," I said. "Derek made choices, and those choices had consequences. He's free to make different choices anytime he wants." "You could rehire him," Mom suggested. "Give him another chance." I gave him several chances. He chose not to take advantage of them. "But he's family," she said, as if that magic word solved everything. "So am I," replied. "So is Sarah. Funny how being family didn't matter when I needed help, but suddenly it's important now that Derek needs help. They tried several more approaches: guilt, obligation, family unity, but nothing landed. Finally, Dad played what he thought was his trump card. "We're disappointed in you," he said. "This isn't how we raised you." "You're right," I said. "You raised me to accept whatever scraps I was thrown and be grateful for them. You raised me to believe that my needs didn't matter as long as Derek was taken care of. But somewhere along the way, I learned that I deserved better. I left that dinner early and haven't been back since." While Derek was struggling with his new reality, Sarah was thriving. She'd taken to business management like a natural, implementing systems and procedures that had increased our efficiency by 30% in the first year. Emma was excelling in her new school, making friends, joining activities that would have been impossible in their old situation. Sarah had enrolled in some business courses at the community college and was talking about maybe pursuing a degree. "I never thought I was smart enough for college," she told me one day. "Growing up, I always felt like the dumb one compared to you and Derek." "Orpe, you were never the dumb one," I said. "You were just the one nobody invested in." Sarah is now making more money than Derek ever did, has a house she owns outright, and most importantly, has the confidence that comes from knowing she earned everything she has. Estranged family who sided with my lying ex during divorce now begs to reconcile after our son was born, and I just left them begging in the rain. Hey Reddit, my family chose my lying ex-wife over me during the divorce, believed every word of her BS without asking for my side, and ghosted me for 3 years. Now that I have a son with my new partner, they suddenly want to reconcile. I left them standing in the rain outside my house while they begged. Here's the whole story. I'm Jake, 34 male. This mess started 5 years ago when my marriage imploded in the most spectacular way possible. My ex-wife Amber and I got married young. I was 25, she was 24. Met in college, dated for 3 years, got married right after graduation, like a couple of idiots who thought love was enough. We met during sophomore year at the University of Nebraska. She was in the business program, I was in engineering. One of those chance encounters at a campus coffee shop where she spilled her latte on my thermodynamics textbook. She bought me a replacement coffee, we started talking, and somehow 3 hours disappeared while we sat there discussing everything from career goals to favorite childhood cartoons. The early relationship was good, really good. She was ambitious, driven, had this energy that made you want to be around her. I was the steady one, the guy who showed up on time and followed through on promises. We balanced each other out, or so I thought. Proposal happened during a weekend trip to Colorado. Nothing fancy, just us hiking in Rocky Mountain National Park, and I got down on one knee at this overlook with the mountains stretching forever behind us. She cried, said yes, and we spent that night planning our future like we had it all figured out. The wedding was small, about 80 people, mostly family and close friends. My parents went all out, paid for the venue, the catering, everything. They loved Amber from day one, treated her like she was already part of the family. Dad would joke about finally having someone in the family who understood business, since I was just an engineer. Mom would take her shopping, invite her to book club meetings, include her in every family event. For the first few years, everything seemed fine. We had the starter apartment with the leaky faucet I kept meaning to fix, the matching his and hers coffee mugs Amber picked out, the Sunday morning farmers market routine where we'd pretend we were the kind of people who made their own kombucha. Looking back, I was playing house while she was already planning her exit strategy. But at the time, it felt real. We talked about buying a house, starting a family, all the normal married couple stuff. I worked long hours, but figured that's what you did when building a career. She traveled for work, but that's pharmaceutical sales. Everyone knows it requires constant client schmoozing and conference attendance. I worked as a mechanical engineer at a manufacturing plant about 40 minutes from home. Long hours, decent pay, stable career path. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave us a comfortable life. Amber worked in pharmaceutical sales, traveled a lot for conferences, made good commission when she actually closed deals. My family loved her. Mom treated her like the daughter she never had. Dad would spend hours talking to her about his woodworking projects, showing her his workshop like she actually cared. My sister Bailey thought Amber hung the moon, constantly asking for fashion advice, career guidance, all that big sister energy, even though Amber was only 2 years older. The warning signs were there if I'd been paying attention. Amber's business trips got longer and more frequent. She'd come home exhausted, uninterested in talking about her week. Started password protecting her phone and laptop for client confidentiality. Our conversations became transactional. Bills to pay, Groceries to buy? Whose turn to take out the trash? I chalked it up to work stress. Pharmaceutical sales is cutthroat. Lots of pressure to hit quotas. I figured she needed space to decompress, so I gave it to her. Turns out she needed space to sleep with her regional sales manager. Found out the worst way possible. Came home early from a site inspection that got canceled due to equipment failure. The manufacturing plant we were upgrading had a cooling system malfunction, and they shut down operations for safety reasons. My project manager told everyone to head home. We'd resume Monday. It was a Thursday afternoon, around 2 p.m. I'd texted Amber letting her know I was coming home early, asking if she wanted me to grab takeout for an early dinner. She didn't respond, which wasn't unusual. She was probably in meetings or with clients. Pulled into our driveway behind an unfamiliar BMW. Figured it was a neighbor's guest or someone parked in the wrong spot. Our apartment complex was always having parking disputes. I grabbed my work bag and toolbox from the back seat, mentally planning what I'd do with the unexpected free afternoon. Maybe finally fix that leaky faucet or work on my Mustang restoration project in the shared garage. Walked into our bedroom to find my wife and her boss doing exactly what you'd expect. The cliche was almost insulting, like they couldn't have been more original in their betrayal. My wife, the woman I'd promised to love forever, tangled up with Bradley from regional sales on our bed, the one we'd picked out together at that furniture warehouse sale. Time does this weird thing in moments like that. Everything slows down and speeds up simultaneously. I noticed stupid details. His expensive suit jacket hung on our bedroom chair, her clothes in a trail from the doorway, the lunch I'd packed for her that morning sitting unopened on the nightstand. That sandwich I'd made at 6 a.m., turkey and Swiss on wheat bread because she said she was trying to eat healthier. Amber's boss, let's call him Bradley because he had that trust fund energy, scrambled for his pants while shouting something about misunderstanding. Like there was some innocent explanation for why he was naked in my bedroom in the middle of a Thursday afternoon. My wife just stared at me with this deer-in-headlights expression that quickly morphed into calculation. I could literally see her brain working, trying to figure out the best angle to play this. I didn't yell or break things. Part of me wanted to flip the nightstand, punch Bradley's perfect teeth, scream until my throat was raw. But I just stood there processing that my 7-year marriage had apparently been a joke for who knows how long. 7 years. We'd been together for 10 total, married for 7, and I was standing in my own bedroom watching it all dissolve in real time. Jake, let me explain, Amber started, pulling the sheet up like modesty mattered at this point. Explain what? My voice came out flat, emotionless. I'm not stupid. I know what I'm seeing. Bradley was trying to put his pants on while hopping toward the door, nearly falling twice. Under different circumstances, it might have been funny. We didn't mean... Look, man, I'm sorry. Get out, I told him. Now. He grabbed his shirt and jacket and practically ran out of the apartment. Heard his BMW start up seconds later, tires squealing as he peeled out of the parking lot, like someone escaping a crime scene. Amber was crying now, mascara running down her face. Please, Jake, please let me explain. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. I grabbed my keys from where I'd dropped them. I'm leaving. Don't call me. Don't text me. We're done. Where are you going? We need to talk about this. I stopped at the bedroom door, looked back at her one last time. The woman I'd built my entire adult life around, who I'd trusted completely, who I'd planned to have kids with someday. There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Then I grabbed my keys, walked out, and drove to my buddy Colin's place. Colin had a spare room and the good sense not to ask questions until I was ready to talk. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and just said, "Come in. I'll order food." Sat on his couch for 6 hours, not talking, just staring at his TV without really seeing it. Colin brought me food I didn't eat, sat next to me in silence, occasionally checked his phone, but never made me feel like I was imposing. That's real friendship, knowing when someone needs words and when they just need presence. Around midnight, I finally told him what happened. He listened without interrupting, didn't offer platitudes or try to minimize it. When I finished, he just said, "You're staying here as long as you need. Guest room's yours." "I need to find a lawyer," I said. "Monday. Tonight, you just process this. Tomorrow, we'll figure out next steps." That night, lying in Colin's guest bed, I couldn't sleep. Kept replaying every moment of our relationship, looking for warning signs I'd missed. The late meetings that ran later and later. The business trips that seemed to multiply. Her password protecting everything for client confidentiality. The way she'd flinch when I touched her phone accidentally. The growing distance between us that I'd attributed to work stress. How long had this been going on? Weeks? Months? Years? Had our entire marriage been a lie? Or had she just recently decided I wasn't enough anymore? Did it matter? The result was the same. I was lying in someone else's guest bedroom while my wife was probably calling Bradley, planning their next move. Filed for divorce the next day. First thing Monday morning, I walked into a family law office and told them I needed to end my marriage immediately. Nebraska's a no-fault state, so the adultery didn't matter legally, but it sure as hell mattered to me. I wanted out fast, willing to split everything 50-50 just to be done with it. The lawyer, Patricia, was this older woman who'd been practicing family law for 30 years. She looked at me over her reading glasses and asked, "You sure about the 50-50 split? Adultery gives us leverage in negotiations." I don't care about leverage. I care about being free of her as fast as possible. Fair enough, but document everything anyway. People get vindictive during divorces, especially when they're caught doing wrong. She might come after you just to make herself feel better about her choices. Patricia was more right than she knew. That's when Amber's campaign of destruction really kicked into high gear. See, Amber understood something I didn't. Narrative control. She knew that whoever told their story first and loudest would be believed. So she got out ahead of it with a version of events that painted me as the villain and her as the victim. According to Amber's story, I was emotionally abusive, controlling, jealous. I'd been monitoring her phone and emails, accusing her of affairs without evidence, making her life miserable with my paranoia and insecurity. She'd finally found comfort with someone who treated her well, and I'd flown into a rage when I discovered it. The story was so detailed, so convincing, that my own family believed every word. Mom called 3 days after I moved out. Her voice was cold, disappointed. She wanted to know how I could treat my wife that way, why I'd let my insecurities ruin a good marriage. When I tried explaining what actually happened, she cut me off. "Amber already told us everything. She's devastated. We saw the text messages you sent her." Text messages. That was clever. Amber had shown them texts I'd sent asking where she was, if she was okay, when she'd be home. Normal spouse texts that could be reframed as controlling and possessive if you squinted hard enough and wanted to believe the worst. "Did you ask to see my side?" I asked. "We don't need to. Amber's been part of this family for 7 years. We know her character. And apparently, they didn't know mine." Dad was next. Showed up at Colin's place unannounced. Told me I needed to apologize to Amber and work on myself before it was too late to save the marriage. When I explained she'd been sleeping with her boss, he actually said, "Well, you must have driven her to it somehow." Driven her to it. Like cheating was an involuntary response to having a spouse who worked long hours. Bailey was the worst, though. My little sister, who I'd protected from bullies in middle school, helped with college applications, co-signed her first apartment lease. She sent me a long text about how disappointed she was in me, how I'd shown my true colors, how she was glad Amber had someone who actually appreciated her. Then she blocked my number. I tried reaching out to extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins I'd grown up with, but Amber had gotten there first. The story was consistent everywhere. Controlling husband destroys marriage through paranoid jealousy. Wife finds happiness elsewhere. Husband can't handle it. My Uncle Dave even suggested I needed professional help to work through my control issues. This from a guy who I'd helped move 3 times and loaned money to when his restaurant business went under. Within 2 weeks, my entire family had cut me off. No returned calls, no responses to emails. Mom blocked me on social media. Dad returned a birthday gift I'd sent him unopened. Bailey changed her emergency contact at work from me to Amber. They chose her. Completely and unequivocally chose her over their own son and brother. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Amber wanted everything. The house, most of the savings, even my truck that I'd owned before the marriage. Her lawyer painted me as financially controlling, emotionally unstable, potentially dangerous. My lawyer was this older woman named Patricia, who'd been practicing family law for 30 years. She'd seen every trick in the book and recognized Amber's playbook immediately. "She's trying to provoke you," Patricia explained. "Every unreasonable demand is designed to make you react so she can claim you're volatile and unstable. Don't give her the satisfaction." So I didn't. Stayed calm through every deposition, every mediation session, every ridiculous demand. When Amber's lawyer claimed I'd hidden marital assets, I produced 5 years of bank statements. When they suggested I'd threatened Amber, I provided email records showing I'd only communicated through lawyers after moving out. The judge wasn't impressed with Amber's theatrics. We ended up with a 50-50 split of marital assets, which meant I kept my truck and some savings. Had to sell the house since neither of us could afford it alone, but at least I walked away with enough to start over. The best part? 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Amber got fired. Turns out Bradley was married, and when his wife found out about the affair, she made some calls to HR. Company policy prohibited relationships between managers and direct reports. Both of them got terminated. Heard through the grapevine that Amber and Bradley tried to make it work after that, but imploded within 6 months. Hard to build a relationship on the foundation of mutual infidelity and destroyed marriages. But that was cold comfort when I was alone in a studio apartment, estranged from my entire family, eating frozen dinners and trying to figure out what the hell happened to my life. Colin was the only friend who stuck around. Most of our mutual friends sided with Amber or just disappeared because divorce made things awkward. But Colin showed up every week with takeout, never pushed me to talk, just sat with me through the worst of it. Your family will come around, he'd say. When they realize Amber lied, they'll apologize. I wanted to believe him. Spent months waiting for that call, that text, that knock on the door with a tearful apology. It never came. Eventually, I accepted that my family wasn't coming back. They'd made their choice, and I needed to make mine. Keep living or let their betrayal destroy me. I chose to live. Threw myself into work. Took on extra projects. Volunteered for the complicated assignments nobody else wanted. Started getting recognized for actually delivering results. Got promoted to senior engineer, then to project lead. The money got better, and more importantly, the work gave me something to focus on besides the wreckage of my personal life. Started hitting the gym hard. Needed somewhere to channel all the anger and hurt I was carrying around. Discovered I actually enjoyed lifting heavy things and putting them down. Within a year, I'd dropped 30 pounds of divorce weight and put on muscle. Felt good to be strong, like I could physically carry the weight of everything that had happened. Moved out of the studio into a decent 2-bedroom condo. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Furnished it with stuff I actually liked instead of the compromised beige everything Amber had insisted on. Got a dog, German Shepherd named Rex, who didn't care about my past and was just happy to have someone throw tennis balls for him. Life wasn't perfect, but it was stable, predictable, mine. Then I met Kayla. We met at a project kickoff meeting. She was the new procurement specialist, and I was the engineering lead. First meeting, she called out a vendor for padding their estimates by 30% and backed it up with competitive bids she'd researched in advance. Watching her dismantle a sleazy contractor's pitch with nothing but spreadsheets and logic was probably the most attractive thing I'd seen in years. After the meeting, she cornered me by the coffee station. So, are all your vendors incompetent or just the ones who think women can't read financial statements? Mostly just incompetent, I replied, though sometimes it's both. We started talking shop, supply chain logistics, vendor management, the mess that was our company's procurement system. She had ideas for streamlining processes that actually made sense. I had insights into what engineering actually needed versus what we'd been getting. We ended up in the conference room for 2 hours sketching out workflow improvements on the whiteboard. That was 3 years ago. Kayla wasn't like Amber. Didn't play games, didn't need constant validation, didn't expect me to read her mind. She said what she meant, and meant what she said. When she was upset about something, she told me directly instead of sighing passive-aggressively for days until I figured it out. We took things slow. I was gun-shy about relationships, and she'd been through her own bad breakup. First date was coffee. Second date was a project car show because she wanted to see my Mustang restoration project. Third date was her cooking dinner at her place while I helped prep vegetables and told her about the disaster that was my first marriage. She listened without judgment, asked clarifying questions, then said, "Your ex sounds like a piece of work, and your family sounds worse. You deserved better." Just like that. No defending them, no suggesting I must have done something to deserve their abandonment. Just validation that I'd been wronged. We moved in together after a year. She had a house in a quiet neighborhood with a garage big enough for my car projects and a yard for Rex. The place needed work. Dated kitchen, bathroom from 1985, yard that was more weeds than grass. But it had good bones. We spent weekends fixing it up together, turning it into something that felt like home. Then last year, Kayla got pregnant. We'd talked about kids theoretically. I'd always wanted to be a dad, and she liked the idea of a family. But when she showed me the positive pregnancy test, it stopped being theoretical. This was happening. We were going to have a baby. The pregnancy was smooth. No complications, minimal morning sickness, just Kayla gradually getting bigger, while complaining her work pants didn't fit anymore. We took the birthing classes, read the books, argued about names until we settled on Oliver for a boy, Hannah for a girl. Oliver Jake was born on a Tuesday morning at 6:43 a.m. 7 pounds, 2 ounces, lungs that worked perfectly based on his immediate screaming. Kayla handled labor like she handled everything else, methodically and competently, with only minimal profanity directed at me. Holding my son for the first time broke something open inside me. All the walls I'd built to protect myself from more hurt cracked wide open. This tiny person who depended on me for everything, who had half my DNA in my nose, who would hopefully get his mom's common sense and my ability to fix things. Colin came to visit in the hospital, brought flowers for Kayla and a stuffed lion for Oliver. "You're gonna be a great dad," he said. "Kid's lucky to have you." For the first time in 3 years, I let myself think about my family. My parents would never meet their grandson. Bailey would never be Aunt Bailey. My kid would grow up not knowing an entire half of his family tree because they'd chosen my lying ex-wife over their own blood. Their loss, I told myself. We didn't need them. Except that decision wasn't entirely up to me. 2 weeks after Oliver was born, while I was on paternity leave doing the zombie shuffle between feeding and diaper changes, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. "Jake, it's Mom." 3 years of silence, and she opened with, "It's Mom," like we just talked yesterday. I didn't hang up. Should have, but I didn't. Just stood there in the nursery holding my sleeping son while my mother's voice, still familiar, still capable of making me feel like a kid getting called to the principal's office, filled the silence. "We heard about the baby," she continued when I didn't respond. "Congratulations. How did you hear?" My voice came out flat. "Well, that doesn't matter. The important thing is we want to meet our grandson. Our grandson, not your son, not, we're sorry for abandoning you, just straight to claiming ownership of Oliver. After 3 years, that's what you lead with?" I asked. "Jake, please, we're family. Whatever happened in the past, a new baby is a fresh start. We want to be part of his life." "Whatever happened in the past?" I repeated. "You mean when my ex-wife lied about me being abusive and you believed her without question? When I tried to tell you the truth and you called me a liar? When you blocked me on every platform and returned my birthday gifts? That past?" Silence on the other end. Then, "We thought we were protecting her. You have to understand, she was very convincing. I'm your son. I was supposed to be the one you protected. Well, we see things differently now. Amber's life hasn't gone the way she expected, and people are starting to ask questions about her version of events. We realize we may have been hasty in taking sides. May have been hasty. 3 years of estrangement, and they may have been hasty." "Who told you about Oliver?" I asked again. "Bailey saw something on social media. One of your friends posted pictures." "Colin. Must have been Colin posting pictures from the hospital. He was so proud to be Uncle Colin. Probably didn't think about privacy settings or who might see them. We'd like to visit," Mom continued. "Meet the baby, talk things through. Dad has been working on a crib in his workshop. It's beautiful, really. He wants Oliver to have something special. 3 years ago, Dad wouldn't even look at me. Now he was building cribs. Let me think about it," I said, because I couldn't process this conversation while holding a sleeping infant who needed to be put down for a nap. "Don't think too long," Mom replied. "Babies grow up fast. You don't want him missing out on knowing his grandparents." She hung up before I could respond to that manipulation. Kayla found me still standing in the nursery 10 minutes later, Oliver asleep in his crib, me staring at the wall. "Everything okay?" she asked. "My mom called. They want to meet Oliver." Kayla's expression went through several emotions in rapid succession. Surprise, anger, calculation. "What did you tell her?" "That I'd think about it." "And are you thinking about it?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to tell them to go to hell. But another part," I looked at Oliver sleeping peacefully, unaware of the family drama swirling around him. "He deserves to know his grandparents, right? If they're willing to try. He deserves grandparents who didn't abandon his father for 3 years," Kayla said quietly. "He deserves family who will show up for him no matter what, not people who will bail the second things get complicated." She was right. I knew she was right. But some stupid, hopeful part of me wanted to believe people could change, that my family could admit they were wrong, and we could rebuild something. That hope lasted exactly 4 days. Bailey texted first. Long message about how she'd always loved me, how the last few years had been hard on everyone, how she wanted to be part of Oliver's life as his aunt. She'd changed jobs, moved to a new apartment, started dating someone serious, all these life updates I'd missed because she'd blocked me. Then came the reveal. "I know things ended badly with you and Amber, but we're still friends. She's really gotten her life together, and I think it would be good if we could all move past the drama. Maybe we could all get together sometime." She'd love to meet Oliver, too. I read that message 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. My sister wanted me to be cordial with my cheating ex-wife, the woman who destroyed my marriage and reputation, the woman my family had chosen over me. And she wanted to expose my newborn son to that toxic situation. I showed the message to Kayla. Her response was immediate. Absolutely not. They haven't learned anything, I said, more to myself than to her. They still think Amber's the victim. They just want access to Oliver without actually acknowledging what they did. So what are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? The easy answer was to tell them all to take a hike. Block their numbers, move on, let Oliver grow up without that side of his family. But something kept me from immediately pulling the trigger. Maybe I needed to see them one more time. Needed to know for sure that reconciliation was impossible before I closed that door permanently. I texted Mom back. You can visit Sunday at 2 p.m. Just you, Dad, and Bailey. 1 hour. If you bring up Amber or try to defend your actions, the visit ends immediately. She responded within minutes. Thank you. We'll be there. Colin came over Saturday night to help me prepare mentally. You sure about this? He asked, drinking the root beer I kept stocked for him while watching me pace the living room. No, but I need to know if there's anything salvageable. What's your best case scenario? I thought about it. They apologize. Genuinely apologize. Not some non-apology about how mistakes were made. They acknowledge they should have believed me, that Amber manipulated them, that they failed me as parents and as a sibling. They accept Kayla and Oliver without conditions. And worst case? They show up expecting everything to go back to normal. They want to play grandparents and aunt without acknowledging the 3-year gap where they treated me like I didn't exist. My money's on door number 2, Colin said. Yeah, mine too. Sunday arrived with typical spring weather. Gray clouds threatening rain, wind that made the trees sound angry. Appropriate atmospheric conditions for a family reunion that had terrible idea written all over it. Kayla set up the living room to minimize stress. Oliver would stay in his bouncer within our sight, but not immediately accessible to them. We'd keep it casual, in common areas only. No tours of the house, no intimate family moments in the nursery. They were guests, not family, until they proved otherwise. At 2:03 p.m., a car pulled into my driveway. Through the window, I watched my parents and sister get out. Mom had aged, more gray hair, new lines around her eyes. Dad moved slower, favoring his left knee. Bailey looked different too, sharper somehow, wearing business casual instead of her usual boho style. They stood outside for a moment, conferring. Then Dad pulled something from the back seat, a wooden rocking horse, beautifully crafted, clearly one of his workshop projects. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find my family standing on the porch holding gifts, wearing nervous smiles, looking like strangers I used to know. Hi, Mom said. Thank you for letting us come. I stepped aside to let them in. They filed past into the living room, where Kayla waited, standing protectively near Oliver's bouncer. I saw my mom's eyes go immediately to the baby, saw the calculation, the hunger to rush over and scoop him up. Everyone, this is Kayla, I said. Kayla, this is my mother Patricia, my father Dennis, and my sister Bailey. Kayla nodded politely, but didn't offer to shake hands. She understood this wasn't a friendly meet and greet. And this is Oliver, I continued, gesturing to the bouncer where my son was awake and alert, staring at the ceiling with that intense baby focus that meant absolutely nothing. Mom took a step forward. I moved between her and the baby. Let's sit down first, I said. Talk. We arranged ourselves awkwardly, my parents on the couch, Bailey in the armchair, me and Kayla standing like prison guards between them and Oliver. Not the warm family reunion they'd probably envisioned. Dad set the rocking horse down carefully. I made this for him. Quarter sawn oak, hand-carved details, should last generations. It's beautiful, Kayla said, because she had manners even when dealing with people who didn't deserve them. Silence settled like dust, everyone waiting for someone else to start. Finally, Mom cleared her throat. We've missed you. These past 3 years have been difficult. For everyone, Dad added quickly. Yes, for everyone, Mom agreed. But we're here now. That's what matters. We want to move forward. Move forward, I repeated. Just skip past everything that happened? Bailey jumped in, playing mediator like always. Nobody wants to dwell on the past. We all made mistakes. The important thing is we're family, and families work through their issues. What mistakes did I make? I asked. The question seemed to catch them off guard. Well, I mean, communication could have been better, Bailey said carefully. On all sides. I tried to communicate. I tried to tell you what actually happened. You blocked my number. You were going through a difficult time, Mom said in that placating voice I'd heard growing up. Emotions were high. We all said things we didn't mean. I never said anything I didn't mean. I told you the truth, and you called me a liar. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Look, son, Amber was very convincing. She had evidence, texts, emails, Witnesses who said you'd been acting strange. We had to consider her side. Did you consider mine? You were angry, irrational. We thought you needed time to calm down. I caught her sleeping with someone else. In our bed. That's not irrational anger. That's normal human response to betrayal. She explained that situation, Mom said quietly. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. She explained it? What explanation could possibly justify that? She said you'd been emotionally checked out for months. She found someone who gave her the attention she needed. It wasn't right, but you pushed her to it. There it was. After 3 years, after supposedly realizing they'd been wrong, they still blamed me. Kayla stepped forward. I think you should leave. Wait, we just got here, Bailey protested. We haven't even held the baby. You're not going to, I said. Because you don't actually want to apologize. You want me to pretend nothing happened so you can play grandparents without acknowledging how badly you screwed up. We're here, aren't we? Dad said, spreading his hands. We're making an effort. That should count for something. Making an effort would have been believing your son 3 years ago. Making an effort would have been asking for my side of the story before cutting me off. This isn't making an effort. This is deciding you want something I have and expecting me to just give it to you. Mom's eyes filled with tears. How can you be so cruel? We're trying to heal this family. You broke it. You don't get to decide when and how it heals. Jake, please. Bailey stood up. Think about Oliver. Don't you want him to have grandparents, aunts and uncles, a full family? I want him to have people who will show up for him no matter what. People who won't abandon him the second someone tells a convincing lie. People who will believe him even when the truth is uncomfortable. We're those people, Mom insisted. No, you're not. You proved that 3 years ago. Dad's face was red now. You're being unreasonable. We made a mistake, fine. But you're asking us to grovel for forgiveness like we committed some unforgivable sin. We're your parents. Show some respect. Respect is earned. You spent 3 years treating me like I didn't exist because my ex-wife lied to you. You never apologized. Even now, you're defending her and blaming me. So no, I don't respect you. And no, you don't get to meet my son. You can't do this, Bailey said, voice rising. You can't keep him from his family because of some grudge. Watch me. Outside, the threatening rain finally started falling. Light at first, then heavier. The kind of rain that soaks through clothes in minutes. Mom was crying openly now. Please. We're sorry. We're so sorry. Just give us a chance. If you were actually sorry, you would have called 3 years ago. You would have reached out when Amber's lies started falling apart. You would have admitted you were wrong without waiting until I had something you wanted. This is about revenge, Dad said. You're punishing us. No, this is about protection. I'm protecting my son from people who will hurt him the same way you hurt me. I walked to the door and opened it. Rain blew in, carried by wind that rattled the screen. It's time for you to leave. They stood there, frozen, like they couldn't believe this was really happening. Jake, son, please, Dad started. I'm not your son. You made that clear 3 years ago. Now leave before I call the police. Bailey grabbed her purse. This is ridiculous. You're going to regret this. The only thing I regret is wasting an hour of my Sunday on people who don't deserve it. Mom tried one more time. At least let us leave our phone numbers, in case you change your mind. I won't. They filed out into the rain, moving slowly like they still expected me to stop them. Dad grabbed the rocking horse he'd made, struggled with it through the doorway. They stood on the porch getting soaked, looking back at me with expressions of disbelief and hurt. You're making a mistake, Dad called through the rain. No, you made the mistake. 3 years ago. This is the consequence. I closed the door. Through the window, I watched them run to their car, struggling with the wooden horse, getting drenched. The car sat in my driveway for a full 5 minutes, engine running, probably arguing about their next move. Finally, it backed out and drove away. The house was quiet except for Oliver making small baby noises in his bouncer. Kayla wrapped her arms around me from behind. You okay? Yeah, I'm good. And I was. Felt lighter somehow, like I'd been carrying their expectations and finally set them down. Colin called an hour later. How'd it go? About as well as you predicted. They wanted instant forgiveness and access to Oliver without actually acknowledging what they did. So you kicked them out? In the rain? Nice touch. Very dramatic. Wasn't planned. Weather just cooperated. You think they'll try again? I looked at Oliver, now sleeping peacefully after his bottle, completely unaware his father had just permanently cut off half his family tree. Probably. But it won't matter. I'm done. Done trying to fix relationships with people who broke them. Done hoping they'd suddenly become the family I needed. Done letting their dysfunction anywhere near my son. Oliver stirred in his sleep, one tiny fist escaping his swaddle. I tucked it back in, marveling at how something so small could make everything else seem unimportant. He'd grow up with one set of grandparents, Kayla's folks, who'd welcome me without hesitation, and already treated Oliver like he'd hung the moon. He'd have Uncle Colin and Aunt Lisa, Colin's girlfriend, who'd become part of our chosen family. He'd have the family we'd built instead of the one I'd been born into. That was enough. More than enough. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Please reconsider. We love you. Mom. I deleted it without responding. Then I blocked the number. Because some bridges don't need rebuilding. Some relationships aren't worth salvaging. And some people show you exactly who they are when things get difficult. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.